Good evening, everyone. Just checking in with AGP. I think we're ready to go. Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to our regular City Council meeting tonight, Tuesday, April 28, 2015. We're at the Veterans Memorial Hall, located at 209 Surf Street here in Morro Bay. For the record, all members of council are present. We do have a quorum. And if you'll please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. And if you'd join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We have no closed session reportable items and mayor council members reports and announcements. I'll just start off with a few. We do have advisory board openings. That announcement and advertisement went out and the date was extended to May 8th. For those who'd like to apply, we have Park and Rec, Finance Measure Q Committee, General Plan Advisory Committee, which is a new group, and Tourism Business Improvement District, and then the Tourism Marketing District, which is one seeking a representative from Morro Bay. And I believe I've got all the ones for the advisory board members, but please check our website. There's an ad coming out again in the Bay News. We would encourage everyone interested in helping us out on these advisory boards. We'd appreciate it. And along with that, I'd just like to give a shout out to staff on the great work on our streets. We've had some hails on some of the streets. Just to name a few, the Beachcomber Sharrows got a lot of folks that were pleased with that. The high school bike lane, if you haven't seen that on 41, the green lanes that designate the bike lanes, and Harbor, of course, Harbor Street with the new bright striping on that. It delineates all our stop signs and everything, so it looks great. Just want to give a shout out to staff and thank them for that. Those are all my remarks. Matt?
Last Wednesday, the 22nd, there was a special Harbor Advisory Board meeting, and this was about establishing a boatyard here in town. And this was the special committee was presenting their market analysis done by Lisa Wise Consulting. There's a very large audience, fishermen, yacht folks here in town, and everybody who spoke was incredibly in favor of creating this boatyard. So this was an important step. The next step coming, or the next, is a site analysis. This process has been going back approximately 16, 17 years. So a lot of this work has been done before. So hopefully, as this next site analysis happens, we can move forward towards working on a boatyard. That's it.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Christine?
Thank you, Mayor Irons, and good evening, everyone. I just wanted to report out to you as a member of, or liaison to the Economic Vitality Corporation, is a SLO county-based economic development group, and each city has a representation as well as the county and many private industry members. And last Wednesday, our city manager, Dave Buckingham, did a presentation. They do presentations every 7 times a year, and each city gets a chance to present about their economic development. And I just wanted to report out that it was Morro Bay's turn, and the alternate Councilmember Heading was there with me, and I just want to report out that our city manager, Buckingham, did a fantastic job and kind of laid out where we're headed and spoke a lot about our LEAP program and got people pretty excited about the ideas that we're talking about in Morro Bay and getting people excited about possible investment in our city. So I just wanted to thank Dave for a great presentation and really appreciate that on behalf of all of us in the city of Morro Bay. And I don't know who opened up that partial wall, but it's great to have extra natural light in here. Does everybody like that? It's fantastic. I think we can still see the screen, so thanks for that.
Great, Christine. John?
Yes, I would echo that. I did attend and would echo that our city manager did quite an outstanding job of presenting where we are and where we're headed in Morro Bay. As your liaison to the Tourism Bureau, Just a reminder that there will be a tourism vision workshop on Friday, May the 8th. And if you're interested in attending that, if you are interested in tourism marketing, you might consider that. Secondarily, I think most of you realize we have this wonderful community thing called a radio station. And the radio station is a not-for-profit that many of us, including the city, reports through and reports on with regard to our issues, and they have received a gracious a match by PG&E to the tune of about $5,000 for anybody that might wish to contribute to see that continue. They will match funds up to $5,000, so that's an availability if you're interested in donating, as I am, to that and seeing that continue. We have an opportunity to raise an additional $5,000 from PG&E. So thanks for considering that and support that radio station. 97.3 The Rock.
Yeah, I'll just echo right in there on our local radio station, all volunteer, and we are in the midst of our fundraising campaign, and we had a very successful event at the station at 695 Harbor, between the library and the fire station, where we had Tognazini's Dockside doing a great smoked rib and chicken barbecue for people for a donation and pre-order on that. And it went so well that we signed up to do that again, this time without the music and fanfare, but with the great dinner available for people. So if you'd like to order chickens or ribs again, we're going to be doing it on Monday, May 4th from 4 to 6 p.m. at the station parking lot. And we're only doing pre-orders this time. You can get your pre-order set at by calling this phone number, 769-8458. And then we're going to be following that up with a concert that will be happening at the music store, Central Coast Music, on the 15th, which I can report out some more information on that as we go forward. But that'll be a evening, late afternoon concert with drinks, and it'll be part of our fundraising campaign going through the year. So look forward to that, and please tune in to 97.3 FM.
Thanks. And with that, we have some reports for staff to update us on. I think we've got perhaps a bridge and water update and Bayside Cafe. Dave, maybe you could start us off with that.
Actually, I'll have Rob start with bridge and water, if that's all right.
Great.
Sure. Let me. Oh, there it is.
Good.
Water conservation update. We have the remote somewhere.
I'll click for you. Just say next.
Next slide. Just one slide of background. We have water sources from Variety. Our state water project supplies the majority of water. We have groundwater, which feeds our brackish water reverse osmosis plant at the desal. Seawater kind of faded back there a little bit, working with Coastal on that permit for those wells. Conservation is another source of water, and that's what we're going to be talking about. And then our future is reclaimed water. Next slide. We all know that the Governor Brown declared a drought emergency with a goal to conserve 20% on January 20th of last year. This year, he has, in March, also proclaimed that statewide he wants to see a 25% reduction in water use. Currently, the state board is working on those expanded emergency conservation regulations, and we will see that at the state board sometime in the middle of May for a hearing to adopt those final numbers. What we're looking at for Morro Bay is we're in Tier 2, so we started out with a 20% conservation, now we're at a 12% conservation level. We're looking to cut back a little bit more. Next slide. This shows the variety of water usage categories that we track and report to the state. With residential, we've seen a 7% reduction. And keep in mind that Morro Bay was already conserving. We're down to, this last December, down to below 60 gallons per person per day. So very good conservation compared to close to 80 the previous year. The conservation level is based on our, for some cities it's a bit unfortunate, it's based on September water usage. If we were August, it might be a little bit better for us. We'd have more population to use that against that. But you can see 67% of our total usage in Morro Bay is through residential water. The city facilities is about 4% of the usage, and commercial water usage is about 24%. We've seen only a 0.25% reduction in commercial water use, and we attribute that to an improving economy. So we're comparing ourselves against years that we didn't have as many people in town to where we have more people using more water. But that's one of our to-do items, is to work more with our commercial users. Next slide. A little bit about the current state emergency regulations. And if you look at these, they look a lot like the current city conservation regulations. We were already doing what the state just imposed statewide. So from don't use water to hose off your sidewalks and driveways, to use a shutoff nozzle when you wash your car, to restaurants are only serving with when requested, and hotels and motels are to provide an option for guests not to have their linens laundered when they stay multiple nights. Next slide. There's a new level of proposed regulations. They haven't been adopted yet, that should result in a 25% statewide reduction in water. The tier Morro Bay is in, as I stated earlier, is 12%. Other things that we're going to see in the upcoming regulations, or anticipate seeing, is new home construction, no more overhead irrigation, micro sprayers or drip irrigation. Commercial will also be required to do the reduction in addition to residential. Irrigation with potable water is prohibited on ornamental turf areas and public medians. We've taken that a bit further. We've shut off the water on ornamental turf in not just medians, but where it's not active turf areas around the city. And according to the governor, he wants us to develop rate structures that maximize water conservation. Now, there may be a bit of a hiccup with that, recent court decisions, so we'll see where that plays out. Again, ornamental turf prohibition, and we are now required to report on our water use monthly on a permanent basis. Next slide. People want to know what a 12% reduction in their water is, and this is a little screenshot of a typical water bill where we show the math on how to calculate what your daily water usage. So you take your how many units of water you use, multiply it times 748, which is how many gallons there are in a unit, divide it by the number of days, and divide by the number of people in your household. And in this case, it comes out to about what our average is. Imagine that, 70 gallons per person per day. So that's how you can determine what you are using, and we are busily working on ways to help people reduce. So like I said, the average water use is 68 gallons per person per day. In 2014, September was our base month that we're using. We need to reduce down to 60 gallons per person per day and to meet the state's requirements. Next slide. What are we doing to achieve? We're looking at potential rebate incentives, cash for grass, not the same ordinance that Amy's working on, but this is a different type of cash for grass. incentives for installing smart irrigation controllers, doing irrigation retrofits, rain barrels, wave, gray water, permit fees, and what is the city doing for its own water usage. Ornamental turf areas, we've shut the water off to those areas. We have replaced the aerators in our city sinks, and we've installed new faucets with hand sensors. All city facilities now have low-flow toilets, and in conjunction with Morro Bay and Bloom and City on its own, we are installing rain barrels on our buildings. We'll see one down at Centennial Restroom and then one on the Public Works Community Development Building, so that if folks want to come into our office and want to see what a rain barrel installation might look like, we'll have a real-life example to show them. Won't dwell on this too much, and I'll put this slideshow up on Channel 20 and on our website so we can review it. This goes through what our existing conservation requirements. Like I said, it's very similar to what the state is bringing the rest of the state to do now. A little bit different with our dock areas. We do allow freshwater wash down, but only if it's for health and safety purposes. So, and then using the minimum amount of fresh water that is required. Again, we'll flip through these regulations and bring us to next steps. So we'll be bringing to council and to our PWAB the conservation incentives to get recommendations and to implement those. We continue working with the tourism industry on ways to reduce commercial water use. We'll bring to council recommendations for city turf management. Maybe we don't need all the turf we have. And then ultimately, we'll also need to add an enforcement component to this. That's one of the state requirements, is we have that enforcement component, and that you'll see that with the budget. Last slide is questions that council might have. And then if people want more information, Damaris Hansen is our water conservation guru, and she can be reached at City Public Works offices, area code 805-772-6261. Through the website, we have some conservation tips, and her email is up there. Next slide, Dave, and we'll finish that off with it's dhansen at the same URL as everybody else has here. So that concludes my water conservation. The bridge update. These are
Hey,
just
Rob,
some,
if I could just one thing on water conservation. So one of my jobs is to translate engineer into normal. So for everybody, ornamental turf is grass around a building that isn't being used for something else. So we've put the last bit of water on the grass out in front of Vets Hall, for example, and we're going to let that grass go away, and then at some point it will be reworked, hopefully by a community group, Walter, and others, to put drought-resistant or drought-tolerant, appropriate
planting
stuff in there. But what we won't do, or are not planning right now, for example, Lilacaiza Park, is we need grass on the softball fields there for kids to play. So that's not ornamental turf. That's there for a good reason. Although strategically, we can take a look at some things like that and say, at what point is it wise to invest in artificial turf on in a place like that? And the other thing I just noted, the council knows, but for the community, we will be bringing to council probably in the next 2 months a proposal for automated meters for all of our water meters, which will replace all of our water meters in the entire city with automated meters that connect wirelessly to a network, and you'll be able to go online. You could have an app on your phone so that you can see what your real-time water usage is. So if you're on vacation and you spring a leak, you'll get an alert on that, and indications from the other many communities have installed this. It's a great conservation tool as folks are able to see literally actually 15-minute blocks by 15-minute blocks what their water usage is.
Brief bridge update, much briefer than the water conservation, is we're on schedule. The actual bridge itself is due to be delivered the third week in May, or set the third week in May. I think it's arriving the second week in May. So I may be able to keep my promise that we'll have I will be able to keep my promise.
I think so.
About the ribbon cutting, and we may beat that by a few weeks, the 4th of July. So
Great, Rob. Thank you. And now if we can move on to the Bayside update that
You bet. Thank you. So just a quick update on the Bayside Cafe. There's been a lot of talk and interest about the Bayside over the past couple weeks. So the Bayside Cafe is a concession. That concession is managed by California State Parks. The concession is not associated with the city of Morro Bay at all, at least right now. The concession agreement for the marina, which the city manages, and the cafe, which State Parks manage, expired 20 years ago and has been running on a month-to-month renewal since then, not a best practice. State Parks has decided to correct that problem and is required to get public input before issuing requests for proposal for both the marina and the cafe. The City of Morro Bay is managing the marina RFP, the request for proposal to operate the marina, via an operating agreement that we have with the State Parks. And remember that we have an operating agreement to manage the marina with State Parks. We'll come to that in a moment. A number of weeks ago, Morro Bay agreed to allow State Parks to receive the public input that they're required to get at our Harbor Advisory Board meeting. So at the HAB 2 times ago, that's why the Bayside was public input was being taken there, not because it's a City of Morro Bay activity, but because we agreed to allow State Parks to use our Harbor Advisory Board as a mechanism to receive public input. Many people turned out to express their appreciation and support of the Bayside. My appreciation and support is demonstrated 2 or 3 times a month as I regularly go there and enjoy it like many of you. So the cafe is currently a State Parks issue. It's not a City of Morro Bay issue. That said, Morro Bay has asked Parks if they would like us to manage the cafe just like we manage the marina. So going back to that operating agreement with Parks stated in number 3, we would like for State Parks to enter an operating agreement with us for us to run both the marina and the cafe. That'd be something we would like to do, but it's really up to State Parks whether they will want to do that. So should the city get management of that concession, it will still have to be negotiated, still go out for an RFP, but it would provide the city a little bit more latitude in how we address that RFP, what things that we describe that our community is looking for in that lease site. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, Dave. And I think there are some questions. Just one point of clarification for people who are at the HAB. Part of the direction from the Harbor Advisory Board was a recommendation to council to pursue the option to take on the lease and start negotiations with it, or at least outreach to the state park, which is part of this presentation. Dave, thanks for that. And currently unless we get some more information as we go through that type of information will come back to council with the appropriate information for council to make a decision on whether or not it does make sense for us to take on that lease site. So I think it is part of a process, but it's great to have an update for so many people that have been inquiring, especially to the city council with many emails. So hopefully that helps. Any questions? Noah?
I just had a question and a comment on the water conservation. Yeah, I did. My one comment is, and I guess it could be a question, but the way I understand the latest round of requirements from the governor's office is based on the progress and effectiveness of cities' conservation efforts. So I think it's important to note that because we did show progress over the last year, our challenge for this upcoming year is much less, where other communities had not shown that there was a commitment to water conservation, and they're actually having to climb a steeper hill at this point. Is that correct?
That's correct. Conservation levels range from the one level that's not being used yet, 4%, to 35%. So we still believe that there's some inequities in that because the higher users, even at 35%, will still be using twice as much water as Morro Bay is using, but it's what was acceptable to the majority of the state.
Great. And of course, the water that we do save, right now we're utilizing our bank, state water, and that's a finite resource that is we're not adding to that bank anymore. We're living off of a savings account that is no longer being invested in. We have approximately 2 years left, as far as I understand it, within that bank, and so every gallon we save is providing us some relief for future years and some additional water in that bank. So it's important all around for us. I wanted to mention a resource for people that are interested in rainwater catchment or gray water reuse, waterless urinals or toilets. Slow Greenbuild has multiple guides that are available for free online at slowgreenbuild.org. slogreenbuild.org. Under appropriate technology, there's multiple guides. Our city staff as well as county staff were involved with drafting those guides. And I believe we do have some copies of those still at Public Services as well.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Noah. Any other questions? Seeing none, great. That'll conclude our announcements and presentations from council and staff. Thanks for bringing all that information up to us. And at this time, we can move on to public presentations. We have a public presentation from the Chamber of Commerce, our Morro Bay Police Department, and then we have 2 proclamations that we'll present. And we'll start off with the Chamber of Commerce with their quarterly presentation.
All right, good evening, City Mayor and City Council and City staff. Nice to see you. I am Jennifer Redmond, President of the Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce and also Financial Advisor for Edward Jones Investments. Tonight I'm here to do our Chamber of Commerce quarterly update for quarter 1, January through March 2015. First, we'd like to thank the city for what the city provides to the chamber. The city gives us financial support of $833 per month. That is $2,499 for the quarter. They also provide us with a wonderful business center building for $1 a year, sorry. And also open communication between city staff and support from the city council. The Chamber provides to the city and to businesses in Morro Bay support in doing business in Morro Bay, event support in business retention and expansion, incubator office support, and being a liaison between neighboring communities and reaching out. Our event support entails financially helping those with smaller events. We are their bank. We try to help them with bookkeeping. Our treasurer does executive board management. We do writing checks, and it's kind of an in and out for smaller events. We also help with our office staff in helping with incoming calls and walk-ins. For events in quarter 1, we managed 236 walk-ins and calls. And they also use our conference space in an office. The events that we helped out with was the Bird Festival, the miniatures, that's the miniature dollhouse show, the citywide yard sale, the Kite Festival, and Morro Bay 50th. Business, how the Chamber has helped with business retention. The Chamber has a monthly forum that is free and open to the public. We try to do different things from, one was with Chief Christie on how to help businesses if they have problems with homeless in the area, how to handle that, how to work with the police, and just send them to the right, maybe the resource center to help out. We also did healthcare and mandatory vacation times to update businesses in Morro Bay to be correct with what's going on with regulations. We did one for social media, trying to help businesses to promote themselves and to let people in Morro Bay and our county know about them. And then we worked on one with marketing, which was collaborating, helping businesses work together to promote each other, so kind of shop local and promote local. Also, our monthly mixers are free and open to the public. We are encouraging people if they have people who want to open businesses, to come to meet other business leaders in the community and to share ideas of how their business is successful, and also welcoming new businesses to our community and promoting them. Other meetings that the Chamber helps to strengthen our business retention is through awareness, like sign ordinance changes, to help the city get together with the businesses to make good changes. Also, business license and amnesty program. We were very active in that, having forums, one-on-ones, and small businesses, and even after programs saying what we're going to do next year. So we're trying to keep them going strong and moving forward to make better business in Morro Bay. Next is areas of business expansion. The Chamber has a very active board of directors. I think if you look behind me, we'll see at least 3, John Elliott, Walter Heath, and Red Davis. Many more are in many programs in the LEAP initiative. We are trying to spread ourselves to make sure we're helping every program in that to be successful so businesses can grow in Morro Bay and attract new businesses. The main ones that the Chamber is active in is marketing, helping businesses to market themselves and to expand, and also hopefully next month our new website will come out and we will have a list of commercial properties in Morro Bay that are for lease or to buy. Other things we're active in is the business walk that we're planning for in October, the downtown area, and also events. The office space incubator, we want to say thank you for that opportunity. We've helped with walk-ins, phone call, and just supporting those that are in our building with 205 calls for the first quarter. And calls means either walk-ins or actual phone calls. We help them with the utilities, power, internet, water, office cleaning. Of course, we share the space, the bathroom, the conference, the kitchen, and we're really excited about those that are with us in the building. As you heard, The Rock 97.3 has been a blessing to the community and does wonderful things, and we have a very good relationship and in-kind. Morro Bay Community Quota Foundation, and then, of course, the Community Resource Center, who's becoming a huge asset in Morro Bay. So we're very grateful to have them and help them. Other things that we've helped in was with walk-ins for visitors. We've helped in the first quarter, 169 people have called or walked in, and so we have helped to help them to learn more about Morro Bay, where they need to go and connect. We've been active in the general plan meetings, merchant association meetings, and of course the LEAP. The things we're looking forward for second quarter is planning more for the Morro Bay Business Walk that we plan to have in October. Helping with the revision of the sign ordinance, launching our website and commercial property listings, and we have a new economic roundtable forum at the new grill hut, in Quintana, a new location, so we're excited about that. And also, we're doing a Bike to Work rally in May, too. So we just want to say thank you, City Council, City staff, Mayor, for supporting the Chamber and letting us help you make Morro Bay a better place to do business in. If you have any questions, I'm available.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any questions to my left? None? To my right?
Jen, just a quick update on the Morro Bay app for the Chamber app. Mm-hmm. Is that still actively being pursued?
Yes, it is. It's just that with our new website, it's interactive. So they're kind of revamping all of that. And also, I'm sure most of you have seen, but we do have a new logo for our Morro Bay Chamber of Commerce that we're very excited about, which shows from all the research we did, it's really important for people to know that Morro Bay is in California. A lot of times you tell people that and they say, where's Morro Bay? And so we wanted to make sure people know it's in sunny California, and we're known for the rock. And that's kind of the first blast, and then the website and the app are going to be interactive, and we're working on that right now. But good question. Thank you, John. Anything else?
Thank you. Thanks very
All
much.
right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
And now moving on to our Morro Bay Police Department app presentation. Commander Millard. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, City Manager, and staff. I appreciate you giving us the opportunity on behalf of Chief Christie and the Police Department to present something to both you and the citizens. It's a pretty exciting time for our Police Department. As you can see what's happening nationally around us, it's very important that we expand on avenues of communication between the department and the community. We believe this is a current technological way of doing so. So I will direct your attention to the screen. We are presenting our new smartphone application. What you see up there is a screenshot of what it would look like to pull it up on a smartphone as of today. And to the left, you'll see a smaller logo, which is what the application would look like when you search for it, which we hope you will all do following this meeting if you haven't done so. It is free to download. We'll cover the cost and what that meant to the city in a few minutes, but you can search for it right now depending on your platform. It's available on the Apple Store. If you have an Android platform or a Windows platform, it's available in all three of those locations. It works the same in any of those. Simply search for it, and I see a couple of you on your phones. I'm hoping you're finding it right now. What is this for? It's better communication. It's not going to replace or supplant anything that we're currently doing. We still believe personal service and face-to-face communication is where it's at, but we want to expand it. I read a recent statistic, that we will expand beyond 2 billion smartphones by the year 2016. That's a pretty phenomenal number worldwide. We have between 100 to 200 million just in the United States. We're not actually the primary user of smartphones. That was pretty surprising to me. But I'm hoping that all 2 billion of them will make their way to Morro Bay on vacation. What it's going to feature on this application, as you can see to the left, are a number of buttons at the bottom beyond that little picture, which is in the beautiful north end of Morro Bay looking back at the rock. It's going to feature one-touch calling. This is not for emergencies, and I want to stress that to everybody. It's not going to replace 911 as a system for getting emergency services. But if you want to call the police department for non-emergencies, you don't have to carry your business card with you or memorize the number or put it in speed dial. You'll just hit the call button on the application. It'll take you to that number, confirm the call, and you'll instantly be speaking to one of our dispatch or routed to one of our other numbers. It offers crime tips. You'll be able to call in things that you believe are going to be substantial or may need looking into by the police department. Again, it's not emergencies, and I'll cover that specifically. We'll offer smart graffiti reports. What I mean by that is if you notice graffiti in the city, you'll be able to snap a photo of that graffiti. If your phone's GPS location is turned on, that will come across in the information that we get, which will allow us to locate it more precisely. It offers emergency notifications, again, something I will cover. Public bulletins, calendars of events, and resource links to other city services or partners that we have available. So how does it work? Let me take the example of the tip button, which is located right next to our call button on the first screen of the application. If you hit the tip button, it brings up a small screen that shows an availability of adding a photograph. This is one I created anonymously or using my own phone, so to speak. Maybe an abandoned vehicle is something that concerns a citizen or somebody walking through the streets. Snap a photo of that vehicle. You can input some information like the subject matter, how long it's been parked there, maybe any other information you believe we need to know. Simply send that off. Once you've established your user profile, you can choose to send your name, number, and email as well, or you can keep it anonymous. We don't want to pressure people to provide more than they're comfortable with. In turn, that goes to a monitored email. We will then respond to that and take care of the problem. This is an example of graffiti information that we've actually received. This is available, and we have over 100 users as of today. We launched it a few weeks ago, and we were trying to get a network of people going so we understood how the application worked. As you can see on the left, the example that comes through, contact details, I've whited out the information about who called and what their name was, but it sent us a basic location of where some graffiti was. It sent us the image that's down on the right side, which is actually in our state park area, but it's in a facility that we monitor. As you can see, quite covered with graffiti, and it's a target location we're at quite frequently. So that was the result. I would like to have said that it was a perfect photo with no graffiti on there. Our city partners did a great job painting it over, but graffiti people can be rather tenacious, and they put a little bit of graffiti back on the door, so I'll give it an almost perfect rating. I then pulled up the app on my own phone, sent a graffiti tip, which went to the chief's email. She was gracious enough to ask me if I wanted a police response, and I said the commander would handle it. Other examples are public bulletins, which you might see up on the left side here of the screen. You can see a number of bulletins we currently have posted on the application, such as recent arrests we've made, events that are coming up like the emergency vehicle show, also any neighborhood watch information we might want to post. We also posted recent changes to carried concealed weapons permit process that is here in the city and available to citizens. That's available right now on the application under public bulletins. What's the cost? And that's really the bottom line, is how much is it going to cost the city, the police department in general. The beautiful thing is right now we have a state grant which is being offered yearly that covers the initial purchase price. So the general fund and city services did not take a single dollar's impact from this application. We spent $1,859 initially to set up the process. It's through a company called Logic Tree Solutions, otherwise known as USPD Hub. That was to generate the application. They worked with the chief, myself, and support services on sort of a tutorial of getting us going. And then it's going to cost us a little over $1,300 to maintain, which we hope and encourage to do so out of that continuing grant. The costs there are not significant, so if that grant somehow disappears or goes away, we could reassess, and we believe we would be able to absorb that, but that's an evaluation I leave to my boss as well. What we do think this will do is allow us better response to and maybe decrease time and staff to take reports, such as graffiti or other crime tips we may receive. We spend some time sometimes locating graffiti. We'll call it in and they might find a location, and we might drive around for a while trying to locate the exact building, because sometimes people don't give us that precise location. We will now have that ability through this application. So what's next? That's a lot. We only have about 13 buttons active right now, and I would say out of those 13, maybe 10 or so are really truly being utilized. It's an expandable application, meaning we can choose to purchase or modify the application buttons we currently have to give us new avenues to either communicate or receive information. Department communications are one such option. Right now I have a load of smartphones in my office. They're all Apples. I think you would call it a bushel. And we're trying to make sure we can deploy those to our staff safely, but that will be a way that we can get communications to and from department members. And what I foresee and what I've been sort of exposed to in my career is I respond on scene to a parent who might have a missing child. What's the most important thing about that missing child? What they look like and where they are. If I don't have that information available and the ability to send that out quickly, that child can get farther and farther away from their parents. I'm a parent and I know how scary that can be. So if we can take that photograph on their phone or somehow snap a photo available and ship it out to all our department members, or foreseeably every person in the city that has the ability to have this application, consider the amount of eyes and ears that we would then multiply beyond just our own eyes and ears looking. That to me is pretty substantial. We have an events calendar online, so we'll be able to post city events, not just for the police department, but for the city. We have community survey options, so if we want to find out how we're doing and get the response from those involved community members, we can do so. And then emergency notifications, and that's a big one. We had a tsunami evacuation plan that occurred a few years ago, which I was part of, and we used a system called Reverse 911 to do so, to notify residents in those affected areas to get out of the path of the intended wave. Using this application, that would then increase that communication, because sometimes you're not at your house, but you might be driving toward that location, and we can tell you to avoid it simply through your smartphone. Traffic hazards and other such options become part of that additional what's next opportunity. And with that, any questions?
Any questions from council? Seeing none, thanks for the presentation and the work. Very informative, and it's pretty exciting on what we're going to get out of that.
Thank you very much for the
Thank
time.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Commander. Thanks, Chief. With that, we'll move on to the rest of our presentations, and I'll head down to the podium. We have two proclamations, and we'll start off with the letter carrier's proclamation. And Joe, I'll meet you at the podium. Joe, thanks for coming out. Sure. So let me just turn this over here, and And this is your proclamation. So, folks, tonight I've got a proclamation from the City of Morro Bay. It's a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Morro Bay declaring May 9th, 2015 as Letter Carriers Food Drive Day. The City Council, City of Morro Bay, California. Whereas every year on the second Saturday in May, letter carriers across the country collect non-perishable food as part of the nation's largest one-day food drive, distributing the donations to local food banks. And whereas the Letter Carriers Stamp Out Hunger food drive is just one example of how letter carriers work to make difference in the lives of those they serve. Since the pilot drive was held in 1991, more than 1 billion pounds of food have been collected. And whereas we would like to recognize all letter carriers for their hard work and their commitment to their communities. All of the food collected in our community stays in our community, and we support carriers' efforts to help those in need in our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Morro Bay City Council does hereby proclaim Saturday, May 9th, 2015, as Letter Carriers Food Drive Day in the City of Morro Bay, and encourage the citizens of our community to support the food drive by placing non-perishable food items in or near your mailbox on Food Drive Day. Your letter carrier will pick it up while delivering the mail, and together we can all help those in need. Joe, thanks very much. Thank you. And this is your proclamation. If you'd like to say a few words.
Sure. Well, thank you to the mayor and to the city council. Jamie pretty much covered everything there. But yes, this is going to be the 23rd year in a row that we've been doing this national food drive. We've collected over 1.3 billion pounds in the last 23 years. To put that in perspective, last year locally right here on the Central Coast, that was about 90,000 pounds of food in one day. This is a day that, we appreciate the acknowledgement, but we really welcome the publicity. We try to strive to do this a little bit better every year. And thank you. And like Jamie said, May 9th, day before Mother's Day. So one time you can put something in your mailbox that isn't mail. So 1 or 2 cans, 2 or 3 bags or a box of food by the mailbox, and we'll pick it up gladly. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And next we have Morro Bay and Bloom, Walter Heath. Welcome, Walter.
Thank you.
And today we've got a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Morro Bay, California, welcoming America in Bloom to the City of Morro Bay. The City Council, City of Morro Bay, California. Whereas Morro Bay in Bloom started its first community beautification project on the grounds of the Morro Bay Library in October of 2013. And so began We Plant Pride, You Can Too. And whereas America in Bloom came to the City of Morro Bay on July 9th of 2014 for the first judging. And whereas Morro Bay and Bloom has expanded its work from the original project of the Morro Bay Library to Centennial Park, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Visitor Center. And whereas Morro Bay and Bloom undertakes city beautification projects on a voluntary basis as part of the Adopt a Park program in cooperation with other civic and community organizations. And whereas Morro Bay and Bloom supports water conservation and other environmentally useful activities through demonstration projects and landscape design and maintenance. And whereas Morro Bay and Bloom contributes to community involvement activities to expand and maintain the urban forest, support charitable causes like Project Surf Camp, help preserve monarch butterfly habitat, enhance the quality of life with public art and historic preservation projects, and increase citizens' involvement through coordination and support of city and other civic organizations. And whereas America in Bloom envisions communities across the country as welcoming and vibrant places to live, work, and play, benefiting from colorful plants and trees, enjoying clean environments, celebrating heritage, and planting pride through volunteerism. And whereas America in Bloom provides expert judging of these activities to evaluate, improve, and enhance the quality of life in a way that benefits all of the city's residents. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the City Council of the City of Morro Bay wish to thank the volunteers of Morro Bay and Bloom, express our support for the organization's activities in collaboration with the city, and to welcome the America in Bloom judges to our city. Walter, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
And here's your proclamations if you'd like to say a few words.
Yes, I would.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. We are going to be welcoming the America in Bloom judges on July 13th and 14th. Morro Bay in Bloom has experienced a year of considerable growth since our last community profile was published in 2014. Our volunteers, to whom I admiringly refer as Bloomies, are engaging their interests and designing projects that are significantly improving our community. The following short project list indicates the breadth of our volunteers' interests and the merits of the American Bloom program that facilitates their dynamism. I start first with the planting of 50 cypress trees in November 2014 to restore a windbreak for overwintering monarch butterflies that is part of a larger strategy to educate the public and to improve monarch habitat in Morro Bay. Members of Morro Bay and Bloom's Monarch Butterfly Working Group were recently named, as of yesterday, as investigators in a study that will establish an experimental station in Morro Bay. The study is sponsored by Monarch Joint Venture. It's going to be implemented by Cal Poly, and we're lucky enough to have our folks as primary investigators collecting data on the effects of feeding on native milkweed species versus non-native milkweed species on the mortality of monarch butterflies. And all of this is happening because two amateur naturalists, Bloomies, decided to make a difference in this area. They were curious about, they wanted to see more monarch butterflies. They learned a lot about the subject, and it's sort of qualified our group as an expert in this experimental study. Number two, the notion of showing the public that rainwater can be collected and stored for irrigation use in an attractive manner was the impetus for our group applying for a grant from the Morro Bay National Estuary Program to install an operational rainwater harvesting system and interpretive panel at the busiest thoroughfare plaza in the city, Centennial Parkway. Local civil engineer from Shoreline Engineering Company, Bruce Elster, provided the design. Our Morro Bay city staff is providing the know-how on the installation, and one of our own Bloomies provided a concept design for the interpretive panel that's in the works now, and we'll have that made up. So over the next couple of months, you're going to see a transformation there at Centennial Parkway, showing the benefits of rainwater harvesting, and then the Bloomies are going to carry that word to our networks and our associates throughout the city, our friends and neighbors. Number three, one enterprising Bloomie decided that welcome signs do not fulfill their function unless they're seen. So she assembled a working group that designed colorful landscapes for the areas around 5 existing welcome signs in Morro Bay and specified drought-tolerant plants. She then personally walked the designs through the approval process, and now that construction project is going to start this Saturday with the first sign. Just two quick additional ones. Number 4, Bloomies are forming alliances with other civic-minded groups. 2 members of our Heritage Preservation Working Group led Bloomies and members of the Morro Bay Historical Society through an inventory of all of the interpretive signage in the city that the public sees, and this is part of a larger strategy to commemorate significant events, places, and people of Morro Bay's history by means of interpretive panels that will be strategically placed around the city. And lastly, the Morro Bay Surfboard Art Festival is a unique Morro Bay event. It's not because this novel celebration of the surfboard art form was written about in the Los Angeles Times, which it was. It's not that one of the beneficiaries of the event, Project Surf Camp, fosters self-esteem and growth among people with special needs through water sports and play. It was the combined total of moments of wistful daydreaming and appreciation brought on by the presence of art in ordinary places that typifies the Morro Bay experience. People frequently catch themselves gazing at the beautiful sights in Morro Bay. The Morro Bay Surfboard Art Festival is actually a celebration of the diminishing art of gazing at something other than our smartphones. The premise behind Morro Bay in Bloom is simple and shared by many organizations in our city. Our organization is a vehicle for people who want to improve their community. You can read about other projects, large and small, when our 2015 community profile is published, And I feel very privileged to be the lucky one who gets to brag about all that our volunteers have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Appreciate everyone's work and presentations today. Thanks very much. And we did pretty well there, getting through all the presentations and everything. We're starting off with public comment, but as one of the lead-ins for public comment, we go through our business spot. And tonight, our business spot will be led by our very own former council member, George League. Welcome, George.
Well, Mayor, Councilman, staff, long time no see. As George Bush said, do you miss me yet? Yeah, I bet. Anyway, this spot is usually open for new businesses in town. Well, I was up at the visitor center, and the gal there says, George, I don't believe you've ever spoke about your business in the town. I says, well, most of them have been here around a long time. She said, well, I don't have anybody for this date, so, and you were always proponent for this, people speaking on their businesses, so I think you should do it. So I couldn't get out of it, so here I am. And we're going to talk about GAFCO. Great American Fish Company, known around town as GAFCO or the Fish Company. It's got many names. It's amazing when I was just sitting there thinking. We started that restaurant in 1980, 35 years ago. 35 years ago I was sitting watching from the Harbor Hut down there at a restaurant closed. It was called Brebs at the Pier at the time. And it was closed. And I thought, God, I started talking to my father-in-law. We got to do something about that place because it looks bad. So we come up with this great idea. They barbecue meat and ribs and everything else. Why don't we barbecue fish? And so we got together and thought, well, that's what we're going to do. So we opened up on a very foolish day. We opened up on the 4th of July, and boy, were we overrun. And it was a little bit of a disaster to start with, but we worked it out. But anyway, the Great American Fish Company, or GAFCO, has become a very popular place. And I think that we're partners kind of with the city because they own the land and we kind of own the building. But so we've had a great partnership, I believe. Morro Bay's been good to my family, and I hope we've been good to them. And we're very proud of the things we've done down there. Another thing we have just lately added, because we noticed that a lot of people coming in, there's always somebody who says, you know, I don't really like fish that much. But so we decided that we were going to really become the best steakhouse in the area. So we're putting out some steaks that's just awesome. I'll make a rabbit hug a hound, I'll tell you. So if you feel like a good steak, the best steak around, come on down and give us a try. We're even trying on Friday nights, we're putting out prime rib. That is becoming a little problem because we never know how much to cook. We either run out in an hour or we got stuff left over. Depends on what we're doing. So anyway, we just want to let you know that we're also doing other things. And we're going to be, in the future, doing some remodeling and upgrade the place. And we're looking forward to that. And we hope you come down and check us out. I think we'll see if we can stick around another 35 years. And if I'm around, I'll come up and say hello again. Thank you very much, and good luck with everything.
Thanks, George. Thank you. Folks, public comment is now open for anyone who'd like to speak to anything that's not on the agenda. Public comment is open. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name. Welcome.
My name is Casey Caldwell. I'm a Morro Bay resident. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I wanted to first thank you for your commitment to neighborhood compatibility and making it a priority. Although I wasn't able to be at the last City Council meeting, I was able to watch it on Channel 20, which is just a real a real gift. And thank you so much for unanimously committing to make neighborhood compatibility a priority. Now, I want to bring you up to date on where we stand. At a recent meeting, the City Council instructed Scott Graham to work with the community members and work with NECO. I sent Scott an email on March 31st trying to set up a meeting, and we finally got a date that works for tomorrow. So it's taken quite a while to actually work with Scott's current schedule. He has a lot on his plate, but we are going to meet tomorrow in just an informal meeting to look at the draft that's going before the Planning Commission on May 5th. Regarding the workshop, the community workshop that should be scheduled, I had hoped that it would be scheduled by now, but it hasn't been, and we're kind of running out of time. Scott doesn't seem to have any Saturdays available. He was suggesting putting it on a weeknight, I think a Wednesday or a Thursday. And I'm here to say to you tonight that that's just not a good time for most of the community. People who work, who have families to cook dinner for and kids to help with homework and have to get up in the morning to go to work, they have a hard time coming to these meetings on Tuesday nights. Our elderly citizens don't necessarily stay up as late as these meetings run, and a lot of them don't like to drive at night. So in 2007, when this topic was addressed before, it was found that a Saturday meeting is the best for getting a larger turnout, and I believe that you were sincere when you said you wanted community involvement. This is the best way to get it. A Saturday morning meeting, I suggest from 9 to 12, will do the best for, will allow the most people to contribute to this process. So I'm here tonight to thank you and to urge you to find a way to make it a Saturday meeting, whether that means having Scott send a representative in his place or pushing out the city council meeting to 2 weeks later. I don't know, but it's yours to decide, and I urge you to consider it. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Anybody else for a public comment?
Good evening. My name is Robert Davis. I live in Morro Bay. The Morro Bay Citizens Bike Committee and the San Luis Obispo Bike Club set up a bike safety table at the Emergency Vehicle Show April 18th. And we gave away 80 water bottles, which are on the display over here, mostly to children who signed a bike safety pledge. I want to read the pledge because I think it's important. I will wear my helmet whenever I ride my bike. I will ride as far to the right as possible. I will signal my turns. I will stop for red lights. I will stop at crosswalks for people who are crossing the street. I will watch for parked cars who might open their doors in front of me. I will watch for cars who are turning right in front of me. I will watch for cars coming into the street from the right. Most of the 80 people who signed this pledge were children. That was very cool. We're going to set up another table at the Eco Rotary Fair May 31st at St. Timothy's. So please come by, sign a pledge, and you'll get a free water bottle. May is Bike Month. We have a couple of activities planned in Morro Bay. May 6th, the Twilight Bike Ride led by Jeff Brubaker and Dave Albrecht. It's going to start and end at the Parklet at 7:15. It's going to go down to the Rock, then along the bike path, past the high school, across San Jacinto, and then back to the Parklet. May 15th, a free breakfast for bike commuters at City Park, the Triangle. That's hosted by the Chamber of Commerce, and the breakfast burritos are furnished by our friend Nick Mendoza from Lolo's. So this is free food for bike commuters, and that includes high school students. So young people going on your way to school, come by on your way and load up on free burritos. May 23rd, Dave Albrecht is going to lead a tour to Baywood in, in Los Osos at 9 o'clock starting at the elementary school. Tomorrow, the County Bike Coalition is kicking off a Light Up San Luis Obispo County program at the Bike Coalition office in San Luis Obispo. the Slow Bike Club has purchased 2,000 bike lights that they're giving to law enforcement officers to hand out to people who are riding at night without legal lighting equipment. And I am proud to say that when the notice of this program went out, our Chief Christie was the first law enforcement officer in the county to respond. Thank you, Chief. And thank you, everyone, for supporting bike safety and Bike Month. I'm going to pass around one of these bike lights now so people can see what it is.
Thank you, Red.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Trina Doherty, Morro Bay resident. I have my usual 3 hats on tonight: AGP Video, Morro Bay Friends of the Library, and Eco Rotary. A quick reminder to all the event planners out there to please email your event information to agp@agpvideo.com so that it can be posted on Channel 20. Please have it ideally in a PowerPoint or at the very least in a landscape orientation with the most important points: what, when, where, and why. From Nancy at AGP and the food group, there are some cookies on the kitchen table in there, so she wanted to let everybody know you can go get a cookie. Big news, Morro Bay Friends of the Library book sale is back. Please join us on Saturday, May 16th at Morro Bay Community Center for our first sale of the year. We have great books of all types in every subject, including children's books, quilting and crafts, cookbooks, birding, and more. Prices start at just 50 cents, and books are grouped by subject for easy browsing. Friends of the Library members-only pre-sale starts at 9 a.m., and you can join at the door. Public sale starts at 10, and the $3 bag sale is from 1 to 2. Come early for the best selection, come late for the bargains. If you have not been to the library since the remodel, please go by and see it because it is beautiful. Third hat, the Eco Rotary Club of Morro Bay, as Red said, would like to invite you to attend our 3rd annual Eco Fair coming up on May 31st from 12 to 5 at St. Timothy's Hall here in Morro Bay. This year we have several new and exciting elements, including a Got Water panel discussion facilitated by the Permaculture Guild at 1 p.m., great music by Zen Mountain Poets at 3, silent auction with some fantastic offerings, and we also are going to have an e-waste collections truck from the Achievement House, which will benefit them. So bring all of your old PCs, printers, cell phones, etc. This year's event will have a diverse group of participants, all eco-focused, of course, as well as yummy food and fun kid activities. There are booth spaces available, room for more silent auction items if you wish to donate, as well as sponsorship opportunities. All the proceeds will benefit our many club projects, including sending more solar reading lights with Hands in Nepal to those in need after the most recent earthquake disaster, which we did donate some today. We also have a project in the works refurbishing the Campfire Amphitheater out at Camp Keep, the outdoor school out in Montana de Oro, used by many local and Kern County schools to educate students about nature and the ocean. We continue to help maintain Bayshore Bluffs Park through the Adopt a Park program. We provide education for waste vegetable oil recycling here locally, and we support youth leadership programs and the Rotary International efforts to eradicate polio. So please visit us on Facebook or call me at 801-4826 for further information, and we hope to see you there.
Perfect. Thanks, Trina. Wow, that was impressive. Public comment is still open. For those who'd like to speak, please come forward.
My name is Betty Winholtz, and before I begin with my comment that I came intentionally to give, I want to make a comment about the smart meters that the city manager mentioned that he wants to put in for our water. And I'd like to alert the council to the fact that the PUC has told PG&E that when the public forced them to do the opt-out program, and PG&E said then we will charge people if they want to keep their old meters instead of going to these new electric meters, not electric, but these smart meters, which can cause health issues for some people and other issues, that they require them to do an opt-out feature. And so I'm wanting to know if you're going to provide an opt-out feature. And it's gotten to the point now where the PUC has told the PG&E that they no longer will be charging us extra for doing that. So these are issues I'm concerned about, and I hope that you will be addressing those if you intend to bring this forward. My real comment is on an A4 item, and my guess is you won't get to those before 7:30 when I need to leave, so I want to make my comment now. It has to do with what I believe is a roundabout at Highway 41. It's your contract with Caltrans. And I want to object to your staff report in that it's not direct. It doesn't tell us that it's about that. It mentions it's an old project. It doesn't refer to, and this is the second time you've had a staff report that does not include history of when I was on the council. Not that my history is important, but that you have not consistently shown institutional history about this item. And when Janice Peters was mayor and I was on the council, we voted to not have that roundabout. We took it off the plate. And so here you've brought it back without mentioning that, without mentioning the public comment, without mentioning all those items that go with that, staff reports, blah, blah. So I'm really concerned, one, that it's not directly stated that you're talking about a roundabout, because that's what it implies. You're not talking about public input. You've put it on the consent agenda, so people are unaware of what you're talking about. And this was a major concern for parents at that time. And I think that it deserves more deliberation, and that you need to either explain that this is not specifically about a roundabout, that's about multiple issues or multiple possibilities, or if it is exactly about the roundabout, you need to postpone that decision until you get input from the high school as well as the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Oh, we've got one more. Good. Welcome.
I'm Melinda Rice, Morro Bay. Is it too soon to speak on the BMX park?
If you can't stay for that, we normally have public comment just for the item as they come to the agenda. But if you can't stay and you want to speak to it,
it might be about 11 o'clock.
Oh no, I don't think it will be. But if you want to speak to it now,
I'll wait because
yeah.
I'd like the update anyway. So,
okay, you'll wait then. Yeah. Thank you. All right, thanks, folks. With that, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council. Any comments or questions to my left, Matt or Christine? None?
Yeah, I do. Just a response, perhaps. Mr. Levitt could offer a response to the concern about item A4.
I was going to pull that as
well.
Oh,
you were?
Yeah.
Well, then should we wait until you pull it then? I can wait for that. Yeah. Thanks.
Anybody else? Seeing none? Okay, thanks, Christine. Since there are no more questions for the public comment on that, we can move on to consent. For the consent calendar, we do have public comment for any of those items on the agenda. Betty, I know you already spoke to that, so I'd open up for public comment for anything on consent. If there's none, then I'll close public comment and bring it back and address the items. Is there anybody who'd like to speak to any items on consent? Seeing none, I'll close public comment to consent, and I'd move that we pull item A4 and A5. Are there any other items to pull from council? Anything? So with that, that was it? Okay, with that, I'd take a motion to approve item A1, 2, and 3. We have a motion.
Second.
Motion by Matt, second by Noah. Any discussion?
Was it you?
No. Okay, it was John. Okay, excuse me. Second by John. Thank you. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. A4. Rob, if you can respond to our public comment on that, and we'd appreciate it.
Sure. This is an old project that's been resurrected. Back in late 90s, early 2000, this project went through project development and almost through environmental review. The project was withdrawn by the city due to Duke Energy backing away from the table and not providing a major source of funding for the project. I understand it was a fairly controversial project during that time. Roundabout was one of the options that was being considered at that time. It still is being considered now as one of the intersection control options there, as is signalization. So Caltrans now has a process where we look at what type of intersection improvements can be done there. The difference between 2001 and today, roundabout design has drastically changed. And it's a required option that Caltrans look at when they're looking at intersection control, is the roundabout as a potential. This project was reinitiated when the city received a rather large portion of funding through SLOCOG to look at this intersection because it is a critical intersection. It's at 2 state-to-state routes and 2 and major city access routes, and it does get impacted at certain times of the day. We're at the very beginning of this process. This cooperative agreement allows us to access those Caltrans funds for development of the project, and it sets up how the rules that we play under as we move forward. The project will be going through full permitting, environmental review, and public outreach. We're just at the kind of the initiation of moving back again onto this project. So we'll be seeing this many more times before it comes to fruition. Now, there's no construction dollars available currently for this project, so we are readying ourselves to whatever those improvements end up being there, be it signalization or a roundabout, and we're not sure which one will be the Caltrans recommendation at this point in time. We're positioning ourselves to be able to receive those construction dollars when they do become available, because this intersection does need improvements for it to function effectively and bring our residents and visitors in and out of Morro Bay. I hope that answered questions.
Yeah, thanks for that. And as a SLOCOG rep for the city, we talk about the RTIP program and having this on the regional transportation program for RTIP basically lines it up for funding, no different than our Harbor Walk and the bridge. And working through the process of developing a plan, we were able to get a large portion of that funded by SLOCOG funds. So
right.
Thanks for that. Any other questions from council?
Yeah, I had one question. Rob, the fiscal impact to the general fund is anticipated to be negligible. Could you define your term negligible? And does that have anything to do with page 1 of 3 on the funding summary, number 01, where it shows the city $104,430 possible expenditure? Is that?
Yeah, most of that money is coming from development impact fees that have been collected on this intersection. So we have, as projects have been approved in the area, they're required to pay for improvements in this intersection, and we do have an obligation to spend those funds in a reasonable time frame towards the project that they were intended to fund. So the city funds are mostly through development impact fees that have already been paid on the project.
Yeah, is that the negligible and
yes.
the 104,000 one and the same?
Yes.
Okay, I guess I would consider 104,000 not to be negligible, but that's.
I guess we're talking Caltrans. It's a several $1 million project.
Certainly.
So to be clear, I think $100,000 is not negligible also, but that's not general fund dollars. That's the key difference. That is impact fees that are specifically sequestered for such a project.
Yes.
Understood.
Noah?
Thank you. I just want to follow up because we've all seen what happens at that intersection in the extreme events of issues on the 101 grade area and what happens at the 41 and Main intersection there and what that means as far as safety for our community, but then also on the day-to-day during the school with walking and pedestrian bicycle traffic from the high school. So I'm assuming, I've heard you say this before, but I think it's important for you to say it again, is that the school district would be very much involved in designing whatever sort of intersection control we end up with to be pedestrian safe as well and to improve the current situation.
Yeah, the school district probably won't be designing the facility. We'll use registered engineers to do the design. But they will provide input to the process, inform the process, and we'll make sure those concerns are addressed through the process. I mean, Caltrans has already commented about that. The kind of the preliminary design didn't show a pedestrian leg on the north side, and they had us include that pedestrian leg on the north side.
Any other comments or questions? Good. Rob, thanks for your comments, and Betty, thanks for bringing this up and having us clarify that. With that, I'll take a motion to approve item A4.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Motion by Christine, a second by Matt. Any discussions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Moving on to item A5. A5 is, this was a council liaison request. It was agendized previous meeting and to discuss and two liaison positions for the 4th of July. I know it made it onto consent. We had a little bit more, just wanted to bring that up for Christina to talk a little bit about it. It was more of a discussion item. I know it fell on the consent agenda, but wanted to just bring this up for a little bit more discussion. Christine, if you could lead us on that.
Sure, I call this one the squeaky wheel gets the grease. I guess Noah and I must be the squeaky wheel on the 4th of July. But originally I did agendize this. I thought we would just briefly have a conversation about if we wanted to have any special support, really from council side, to ensure the 4th of July is a success this year in its transition year and that it remains a very community-based experience. So I just basically trying to figure out how to do that to make sure council's acting appropriately. And we're acting collaboratively with staff and then also ensuring that there's the community component that I think naturally that's kind of, as council members, our job to do. So it's not really for staff to put the event on, but for all of us to work together. So, you know, how it got here or how it didn't get there, I think we could, though, if anybody wants to, you know, challenge, that's okay with me. I probably have time I could put back in my calendar if I wasn't, you know, going to get involved in the 4th of July this year. But anyway, that's sort of a little bit of a brief history of why I brought it forward. It's just to make sure that we know we're all operating together and to ensure a great 4th of July, which is an important event for our community.
Yeah.
That sounds good?
Oh, yeah,
Thanks.
that sounds great. Any other comments or discussion? Seeing none? Okay. Well, thanks. I didn't know if there was any other questions on that. With that, anybody like to make a motion to approve item A5?
Well, if I were Matt or John, I would.
Yes, I would make a motion to approve item A5.
We have a motion and a second? Second. So we have a motion by John, a second by Noah. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0. And with that, we'll move on to public hearings, and maybe we could take a 3-minute recess. There's cookies in the back. Don't all rush at once. And we'll be back at 7:32. Thank you. Started. Thanks very much. All right, AGP is signaling we're ready to go. So here we go. Welcome back, everybody. We are now moving on to public hearings. And our first and only public hearing item for the evening. This is a coastal development and conditional use permit approval, CPO 442 and UPO 381 for BMX Park on vacant city-owned property at 301 Little Morrow Creek Road. It's approximately 400 feet north of the intersection of Little Morrow Creek, Radcliffe, and Main Streets. And we'll turn this over to Ms. Jacinth.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the Council. As you stated, this item is for coastal development permit and conditional use permit approval for a new BMX bike park to be located at 301 Little Morrow Creek Road. On the screen, you'll see a vicinity map of where this project is located, and the green outline identifies the area of the property that is city-owned. The red arrow on the screen is pointing to the area where parking would be provided, which is the piece of the property that fronts onto Little Morrow Creek. And this is a closer aerial map. The BMX bike park proposal would include installation of 600 to 750 lineal feet of bike skills. There are 3 bike trails that would be included for riders of varying abilities, and I'll show you that on a site plan in a moment. The site plans include amenities such as park benches, signage detailing rules of conduct for the bike park, along with park hours and fencing. And this item is before the City Council for approval because as a publicly owned piece of property located in a planned development overlay, it requires City Council approval after receiving a recommendation from the Planning Commission. This item was heard by the Planning Commission at its April 7th, 2015 meeting as a duly noticed public hearing. And as described in the staff report, the Planning Commission has forwarded a favorable recommendation for approval of this project. And in a few slides, I will go over those, the details of that recommendation for you. The zoning for this property is M1 PDISP. The PD refers to the planned development overlay, and then also as a property that's located as an interim use. The project is being processed according to the interim use overlay requirements for a recreational use. And this is that site plan that I pretty much already described in my first slide, that the site plan would include various trails. So the brown on the screen in this area here depicts the various trail features, beginning, intermediate, and advanced. And the next couple of slides show a Google Street View image of what the existing site looks like. There are vacant properties to the north and to the south, so to the casual observer, it's a little bit hard to discern where the city-owned property is and where the PG&E-owned properties are, which adjoin the city-owned property. This is looking from Little Morrow Creek Road west, and then on the opposite side, looking east from Main Street. So as I said at the April 7th Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission did adopt a resolution forwarding a favorable recommendation to the City Council for consideration. And during the course of that meeting, the Planning Commission did identify 6 concerns, which have been identified and addressed in the staff report with a response detailing each of them. As you'll see on the screen, the 6 concerns were: 1, lack of bathroom facilities, improving safety for bicyclists traveling to the park, specifically southbound travelers, bicyclists, dust control, shade structures, after dark lighting, and possibility of safety crosswalk for bicyclists. The largest issues centered around items 1, 2, and 6. And after the meeting, an after action letter was sent to the applicant with direction to respond to these concerns that the Planning Commission had, and that was included as an attachment to your staff report. The applicant responded, and staff reviewed that response. And essentially, the first one, the applicant's response was that it's not anticipated that the average user would stay long enough for need of bathroom facilities, coupled with the unattractive nuisance factor of both maintaining porta potties and discouraging vandalism. Staff would like to point out that in the MOU that's approved between the applicant and the city, it is the responsibility of the applicant for repair and maintenance of the park. Items 2 and 6 are mostly the same concern. The issue is primarily how to ensure bicyclist safety and asking staff to explore the possibility of a safety crosswalk for bicyclists. Staff did consult with Public Works Department staff regarding the feasibility of doing such a crosswalk, or whether there were alternate crosswalk locations farther north of the site that might be appropriate. Ultimately, after multiple conversations, no viable alternatives were identified as possible solutions on whether or not a crosswalk could be done. Specifically, as far as the city's general plan, the circulation element does discourage mid-block crosswalks. There is some area in this vicinity that is Caltrans right-of-way. That is another issue. And then ultimately, the staff recommendation, which is included in your staff report, is that that staff's recommendation is that bicyclists use the existing bike lane there and that they follow the vehicle code that applies both to motorists as likewise to bicyclists also, that they approach the park to the through the bike lane and then turn at the intersection of Radcliffe and Main. So at the Planning Commission meeting, this was the proposed conditions that were adopted by the Planning Commission, and they are also, which is Exhibit B to your staff report. They are also included to the council resolution, which is Exhibit A. And just wanted to go through some of these proposed conditions to outline what is before you tonight. There are 8 planning conditions. This does not include Building Division or Public Works Division or our standard conditions. The first condition is the expiration of the conditional use permit. Per our interim use guidelines, there is a 5-year limitation at which time there is a possibility for a renewal of that. That is included in there. Condition number 2 is the requirement for a landscape plan within 90 days of approval that would detail park usage, more specific landscaping amenities. 3, there is a condition of approval on the project that would require garbage and recycling containers. Staff did receive correspondence from the public that questioned why that was not included in the project. It was included, and it was in the resolution that Planning Commission adopted. You'll see that as planning condition number 3. And then 4, this is proposed to be a fenced-in bike park, and there is currently fencing proposed to be 4-foot tall orange snow fencing. A condition was added to eliminate the orange color, require that it be either green or brown or earth-toned colors to blend in. And then parking, as described in the staff report, the parking is proposed to be on adjacent PG&E owned property, and the applicant does have an agreement with PG&E that's in the process of being signed. A draft of that agreement was forwarded to staff for review. The parking does allow, under the PD overlay, it does allow for an alternative arrangement to parking. So you will see that the parking requirement as 5 parking spaces and then 1 paved ADA accessible space is less than what might conventionally be required under this, but our parking ordinance does not have a specific use requirement for parking. And so under the PD overlay requirement, that does allow this alternative arrangement. And then also in condition number 5 is the requirement that this project go back before Planning Commission within 6 months of approval. And the conditional use permit process does allow staff to revisit any issue such as the parking. If the parking is not working, if we are made aware of issues with the project, it does allow us to revisit this, and then the condition does allow for additional conditions that may be applied based on Planning Commission's review within 6 months. And then planning condition number 6 is requiring that bike rack parking be provided. The applicant has presented to staff is that the bike park project is not anticipating a high use of vehicles traveling to the bike park, and that the anticipation is that the users would primarily be approaching the park via their bicycle and not via vehicle. So that condition was added because the plan submitted did not show any bike rack parking. And then also, condition number 7, signage is currently proposed to be limited to informational signage only. And then the 8th condition, and this is, I have already alluded to, the signed consent from PG&E. Although we do have a copy of the agreement with PG&E for parking, the copy that we have is not signed, and so that would be a condition of approval as well. And then the 9th condition is that the hours be limited to daytime hours only. So these are the proposed planning conditions of approval. Staff did not add additional conditions of approval to this project. After it went from Planning Commission to the City Council, the direction that Planning Commission gave to staff was, rather than apply additional conditions on top of the 9 that are before you here on the screen, is that they directed staff to bring these concerns forward to the City Council for inclusion in your deliberation on potential approval of the project. These were concerns that the Planning Commission identified. However, although they did adopt this favorable recommendation, these were some concerns that they thought were worthy of additional consideration. One other thing that I wanted to point out on the site plan, and I didn't mention this in the earlier site plan slide, is that currently the proposal is that vehicles arriving to the bike park, the access would be on Little Morrow Creek. The plans would allow for pedestrian and bicycles to access the park from Main Street. There would be an opening, but vehicles would not allow, there would be no access to the bike park from the Main Street. And of course, because you see the parking is on the east side of the property. And so lastly, in conclusion, although the city has provided for an increase in Class 1 bike lanes, the project would fulfill an unmet need to provide additional off-road bicycle facilities, which is consistent with policies contained within the access and recreation element and the LCP coastal access and recreation policies. And also it would be consistent with Council Goal number 8, which is enhanced quality of life. And I apologize, there was an error in the staff report. I said it was Council Goal number 3, but that was a typo. I meant to type 8. And with that, staff recommends that the City Council accept the Planning Commission's favorable recommendation and approve the requested coastal development permit and conditional use permit for the BMX bike park with the incorporation of the conditions of approval attached. And with that, I'm available to answer any questions, and I believe we also have the applicant in the audience who also may like to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Jason. Thanks for the report. And for now, we'll start out with council questions, open it up for public comment, and then back for discussion with council. And I know Bonnie's out there in the audience for public comment. Maybe if you want to come up at the beginning of public comment, we'll get through our questions first, and then we can get through that. Questions to my left, Matt?
Yes. I do have a few questions for staff. Number one is, what would be the time frame for construction?
Time frame for construction?
If this was approved, it's on. I'll yell. I'm sorry. Oh, thank you. So what's the time frame for construction? I'm thinking if it were approved tonight.
I don't have that answer. The applicant may have some more specificity regarding trail construction.
Okay. And then my next question was in terms of for staff, seeing how this is situated on Main Street, Little Morrow Creek Road, with the bicycle access through Main Street, what sort of mitigation do we have in mind to stop people from pulling up, dropping their kids off on the street there?
I believe that the mitigation for discouraging drivers from pulling over is there's I mean, it would be a vehicle code violation, essentially. There is no place, there's no turnout.
No, I know, there's just that
there.
bike, I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
because, I mean, my kids, we're going to go there, and I'm thinking, okay, they have the bike lane there, and I'm just thinking problematically, thinking, you know, kids coming up and down the street there, it's like, okay, what can we do for that? If anything, the reason I bring it up is we have a number of people up in the Radcliffe Harbor Track talking about traffic there that's could possibly increase somewhat, and if we have people stopping on Main Street there with the issues we have with Radcliffe, that could be problematical. So what I'm thinking is, over on the other side of Main Street by Limos, we put up that blinking traffic signal speedometer meter. Is it possible to put one up, like something like that, on the north side of the bridge there? Anyway, it's something to slow down traffic and to let people know. That's what I'm just thinking, looking at, because the plan looks great. I'm just thinking of different issues besides that were put up there. So that's all my questions.
Rob, would you be able to respond to the traffic part of it?
Traffic-wise, we do have some tools in our toolbox to keep people from stopping. There is we can sign that section of Main Street as no stopping at any time or no parking there. Probably no stopping would be more appropriate, because even in a red no parking zone, you can stop. You just can't park. People have figured that out, so that's why we created the no stopping section. As far as the radar feedback sign, the speed limit on Main Street up to Radcliffe is 35 miles an hour. Based on speed surveys, you're slowing down as you're approaching that bridge. It's typically about 35 miles an hour through there. We haven't seen a problem with speeding on that northbound side being 35 miles an hour. So we don't have the ability to just reduce that to 25 miles an hour. The vehicle code doesn't allow us to create what is known as a speed trap there by just signing at 25 miles an hour without a traffic study that would support that. So we would survey the traffic. It seems a little ridiculous, but I'm going to explain it to you anyway. You take the 85th percentile speed. The 85th percentile is what the reasonable person drives a section of roadway. And you set the speed limit at that speed. So, and then we're allowed a discretionary 5 mile an hour reduction for local conditions. That's really all the latitude that we have as far as speed limit goes on that stretch, without doing things like increasing the boundaries of the central business district, which the vehicle code says the prima facie speed in a central business district is 25 miles an hour. So that would be the only really way to reduce that speed, or build a school there, I guess, would be another approach.
Christine?
One thing, I'm not sure if I heard correctly, but the primary access for the site is off of Little Morrow Creek Road. The primary access is not off of Main Street. So any reasonable driver, if they are dropping somebody off in a car, should drive to the parking lot on Little Morrow Creek Road and unload their kids and their bikes, or their adults and their bikes.
No, I totally agree with you, Dave, and the key word of your sentence was reasonable, but sometimes we have parents hauling kids, and reason goes out the window, no pun intended, along with the kids. And so with that in mind, I'm just thinking of the safety. That's, I'm not trying to put a kibosh on this at all.
Understood. I just want to correct for everybody. I thought I heard somebody say the primary access is intended to be on Main Street. That's not correct. The primary access, and in fact, depending on how the fencing goes in, there may not be access even to get into the bike park from the Main Street area because of the fencing.
Christine?
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for the report. Ms. Jensen, I had two questions that were kind of touched on at the Planning Commission as well, so I'll just briefly talk about them here for staff to respond. So obviously the restroom question is sort of out there, and it's good to know that the restroom in the MOU would be on the applicant. I've seen the applicant's response to the Planning Commission's request about a restroom. Have we done, at this point, either the applicant or the city, have we done any research on what a temporary restroom cost would be at all? And just do we have kind of a ballpark figure on that? And if not, it's okay if you don't know. I don't know.
Staff does not have numbers on what rental costs would be for a porta potty, and we did not receive that from the applicant.
Okay. And then the other question I had, when I spoke to Mr. Livick about the circulation for bikes in particular, he talked about some things that were not in the staff report, and I wanted to give him a chance to talk about it. And basically, it's in response to the staff report where it's described that I know that there were many hours that community development put together with public works, and it didn't seem like that all that information got in the staff report about how much time has been spent on circulation for bikes focused on safety. And I think Mr. Levick said
I'm going to put a picture up on the slide that might help us discuss this.
Okay, great. And those would be my two questions for now. Thanks.
We're going to wait for your slides to respond to the questions, Rob?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Can I sneak one question in now while he's doing it for Cindy? Okay, thank you.
Go.
So 6 months from permit approval, that means 6 months of operation, or is it 6 months from today? Just kind of clarify that for people for when it comes back to the Planning Commission for update.
The way it is right now, it would be 6 months from today, but if the council so desired to allow the applicant time to construct it, maybe it takes 4 months to put the park in, and then 6 months from today, we've only had 2 months of operation to gauge how it's working. That's something that's certainly up for revision, tweaking that language.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So Public Works staff has looked at perhaps ways to get bicyclists safely across the street, or safer across the street there, rather than the explanation that we gave planning. The cyclists would ride north or ride south on the bike lane and merge into the left turn pocket at Radcliffe, and then take a left there, ride up to Little Morrow Creek Road, take another left, and enter the bike park that way. It might be difficult to encourage some users to actually take those maneuvers. So we're looking at options, and this is one of the options that we're looking at. This is the on-off ramps there at Highway 1 and Main Street. What we wanted to avoid was putting a crossing south of the free right turn movement coming off of the highway, because they are coming off at pretty close to freeway speeds before they slow down to 35 miles an hour there, and they're typically won't be looking that direction for somebody crossing. So we're looking at potentially crossing at that little landscape island directly across, but then we would need to create a segment of Class 1, basically, with perhaps a PG&E easement, because that's not crossing our property, nor is it within the right-of-way to get to the bike park. So that's one of the options that we're looking at. We did look at doing this green crossing at Radcliffe also, but there's an awful lot going on at that intersection existing right now. Lots of turning movements. Other things that we've looked at is crossing people further north and creating a longer Class 1. It's just dealing with multiple property owners and gaining those access rights to have a Class 1 path, which you would need to have because you're riding opposite direction of what would be a more, if you're riding on the bike lane, you shouldn't be riding opposite direction of traffic. So that is one of the options we're looking at, and we probably, hence the green graphic, we would probably look at doing that in similar to what we did at Atascadero Road at the high school with green paint and probably high-vis flashing beacon ahead of it.
And that would be expected to be on the city, the expense, or on the applicant, or is that something we would need to discuss?
I think it's something we would need to discuss. Can't speak for the applicant. It's not on Public Works' high priority list at the current time.
Right.
So it may take the applicant to push this forward.
Okay, thanks.
John?
Great, and thank you for the excellent presentation. And my grandkids have already instructed me how to vote, but I told them I had to ask a couple of questions first. With regard to the rules of conduct that are mentioned in here, is that something that the city is going to compose and post, or is that something I believe it says in the agreement here the city is going to do that, and if so, what does that consist of?
Some draft signage had been submitted to the Recreation Department, and the signage would be posted. I believe the MOU states that the Public Works Director would be posting the signage. Our City Attorney's Office is reviewing that to make sure that it conforms to all of the required legal noticing, and I believe that's still in process what that signage would look like. But it would be approved by the city, and I believe the MOU says that the Public Works Director would be posting that, or his designee. And then if I may answer a previous question by Councilmember Johnson, I just became aware of porta potty rental costs that the city has for a little birdie.
Fell out of the sky.
Just whispered in my ear and said that at the Harbor Yard, the city is paying $80 a month for a basic standard porta potty. Yeah. So just thought I'd throw that number out to you.
Thank you. I was more concerned, not necessarily about how it looked, but what it said, the signage, what's the verbiage. Is this safety language for children or young people or young adults? And are these the rules of the road, so to speak?
Right.
That will be posted?
Absolutely, that is correct. So that this is a dangerous sport, ride at your own risk, helmets are required, that kind of safety language in plain spoken English, such that a young person could read it and understand it, and then as well as conforming to our something that's acceptable by the city attorney as well.
Great. So I assume there's standard language for that, and that would be, maybe the applicant could speak to that, but I assume that's what that is. Is the fencing slatted, or is this just wire fencing that's the plastic coated? And you spoke to the coloring of it, but is it slatted so that you cannot see through the fencing, nor can you see out if you're trying to look through the fence?
So really neither. This is snow fencing, as I understand it. It's in other staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a heavy, durable plastic material. It's not slatted. It's like you would see on a construction job site, that orange, I don't quite know how to describe it, snow fencing. It's very noticeable. Yeah.
No slats. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess the real question is, can you see through it?
Yes.
Yeah. So the concern I have is that young kids are often distracted and showing off, especially when friends go by. But if the fencing is slatted, they tend not to do that because they're not seen. Now, one could argue that slatted fencing then, allows that to not be an open environment. But I would just maybe ask that we look into that, because I do have a concern about so-called show-offs that like to be seen by others, and accidents occurring as a result of that. And people waving as they drive by to those that they recognize that are riding on the unit itself. So that's a concern of mine. And then I noticed that there was no water that was going to be available, and I guess the rationale for that was dehydration wasn't a concern because of the coastal environment. Well, medically that's not really true. You get dehydrated if you're sweating, and you sweat if you're riding a bike. And so I do have a concern about there not being a water available. Not that I want to build nor waste more water, but I don't know if there are portable units that might be made available, like on golf courses that are plastic and chained, that might be able to be used. My grandkids get thirsty in a couple of hours of running around, and if these kids are going to be riding around on this thing for a while, I think it would be good to have water. And then I guess by closing at dark, do we mean dusk? Is that?
Yes, that's correct.
In essence, okay. So dusk. And the liability, trail of liability, I get the liability trail for construction and during construction, but ultimately I assume the city's a deep pocket for this. Should there be accidents, broken necks, issues like that, shared liability, what's the trail of liability for this thing? Hi, Joe.
Through the mayor, the city actually has immunities pursuant to the government code because it's a bike trail, a bike park. There's actually specific provision in the government code to allow immunities because the public policy that was trying to be created was to create bike parks. That doesn't mean the city won't get sued. That doesn't mean that the nonprofit that's involved won't get sued. And the way that the MOU was agreed to, there wasn't anything that said the bike park organizers are holding the city harmless. The city has insurance that covers those potential liabilities, and that insurance we checked, and that insurance would actually be available. So the likelihood is the city, in my opinion, the likelihood is both parties would get sued if someone got injured. The likelihood of the city actually ending up with liability is probably not high. However, I could see a creative attorney saying because the city was involved with the private party and the private party could be found liable, the city's insurance may end up still having to cover that liability, as well as the third part, the nonprofit's insurance would also be involved.
Good, thank you. The issue with regard to the restroom, I know we've talked about that, but it's also my sense is that there are older folks, and by older folks I mean 30 plus that do use these kinds of bike tracks, and maybe even 40 or 50 or 60. Maybe Red can help me. But as one ages, so does one's prostate, and that speaks to more frequent uses of the restroom. So I think that is a concern, that I would have, that we don't have a facility there, and I certainly don't want to spend or have anybody have to spend the money to build a permanent facility. But I think having a facility there would be helpful. So my 4 concerns are liability, which has been answered, the slatting of the fencing, because I do think kids do that, and I'd be concerned about safety with regard to that. The signage being appropriate, large enough, not that young people read it, but I do want those rules posted and them to be clear. And then the whole issue of making sure that this thing closes at dusk. And I don't know, is it lockable? Or can you continue to ride at midnight?
It is not lockable. The large size of the property would
preclude that.
Preclude
Okay.
that, correct.
Got it. Well, thank you. Well, I appreciate it. I think it's a great addition for the community. I am concerned about some of the health and liability issues, but thank you for answering those questions.
Noah.
Thank you. I'll just follow up quickly on the insurance component. And I'm assuming that our insurance policy is very similar to what we see at the skate park, as well as what we had at the former bike park near what was Flippo's, except in this case, we also have the additional third party. So I'm assuming that's correct. So we already have these risks existing, and we did previously with the old bike park. Another item that I want to touch base on is there's a concern about the eventual Radcliffe realignment, or the possibility of realigning Radcliffe and Main to make it much improved intersection. And there's nothing about this project, which is seen as a temporary project, that's why it's constructed as it is and being permitted as it is, that would prohibit the realignment of Radcliffe and Main.
That's correct.
Okay, great. And I also want to follow up because I know there is some potential of one-time special events at the park based on the park, and if the applicants could talk about how they would see those events in relation to the ongoing daily use of the park, what we might build in to help reduce the concerns about from the neighborhood about the impacts of the events. So, that would be in relation to restroom facilities or so forth, just to make sure that there's that ongoing daily use, and then how would we manage events to make sure that they're not going to create an extra burden or safety issue.
Right, and certainly if there were special events, if there was some kind of bike competition or something that's outside of the normal business plan, they would be required to get a temporary use permit from planning. And so in those situations, we would ask them, what is your traffic control plan? There's going to be extra vehicles. You have people from out of the area coming. We would want to know, all of those project details, start time, stop time, how many people do you expect? And that would be handled on a case-by-case basis.
Great, excellent. Last question related to signage. There was also a concern because we do have this 6-month review, and so we'll probably have a little discussion about how to time that so there's some track record of operations to really better identify any issues. But the idea would be also, if someone does identify a need or a problem or needs to report something, on the signage and you have it in here, but it would clearly say, call this number if you have a concern or information or would like information about the park. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I believe that the signage proposal does have a contact number just for daily, the garbage can is overflowing, like that kind of concern. But if there is a city concern, if there is an issue with the conditional use permit process, there are a number of ways to get a hold of staff. There's certainly the Notify Me feature on the city's website. Planning staff is available every day in the community development department. That would be who one would contact.
Okay. And just a quick question following up on the bicycle safety and circulation. The idea that Mr. Livick floated, my opinion, we already have existing bicycle safety issues all along North Main, and we're working to improve those. Would you see any benefit with actually extending that green stripe across further north? Because I do see right now, as people ride away from the high school and so forth, going southbound, northbound Main Street traffic getting onto the highway comes across there fairly quickly at times. And would it make any sense as we look at that further down the road to extend that green stripe across, just to highlight that there is still bicycle traffic through there?
As we move forward with revisions to our bicycle master plan, that would be an excellent subject area we have a obligation to renew that plan every 5 years, so that would be a perfect spot to address that issue for alternative circulation in the Main Street area.
Okay, great. And that would be probably 2-3 years out for the update?
I'm not even sure. Maybe a year out.
Oh, time's flying.
I think we've had it for a while.
Okay,
it's
that's
coming
good
up.
timing then. Okay, thank you very much.
And just if I could, as we all get excited about that, that's the plan, that's not the budget. And so we can write the plan as much as we want, but that equals, what you see there is a Class 1 bike lane requiring an easement across privately held property, and as we extend that, that's more easement to get, and that is more construction of Class 1 bike lane to pay for, which is off the road, separate bike lane, paved. So there's a price to be paid for that wonderful opportunity. But yes, so there is a whole host of unmet bike needs, and that lane may well become one of them soon.
And the question I was getting at was, we'll be able to wrestle with that after observing the performance and issues
Good point.
created by
Yes.
the park, and
Yeah, it's a great
deal
point.
with it if necessary.
Okay, you done, Noah? You good? Okay, thanks. Cindy, I just want to ask, in your presentation, you said it was reviewed by Planning Commission April 7th, 2015. I don't know if it really told some of the more of the story, when this was first introduced from a presentation, how long this has been in the process. Can you just talk a little bit more about that, please?
Certainly, yes. So and this is in the staff report as well. Just you're asking for a little bit more history on the development of this, yeah.
Yes.
So, as many in the community would know, the city did have a bike park from 2000 to 2005 at 220 Atascadero Road. That property was sold to a private property owner. And
I just meant this proposal when
Yeah,
this
okay.
was first brought forward.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
So the applicant first applied in 2013, approached the planning department about seeking approvals to do a bike park. This went to city council 2 previous occasions. Those occasions were August 13, 2013, to consider a MOU, and then there was a second MOU at the January 13, 2015 meeting. We've worked with the applicant, got the project ready for presentation at Planning Commission, and that was the April 7th meeting where they considered that. Does that answer the question?
Yep, thank you. Also, the couple questions I have as far as we talked a little bit about bathroom and trash, and I know I talked with the applicant as well, but for Scott, Rob, whomever, should some of those things materialize as a result either of this discussion or out of necessity within the first 6 months, we talking about screening. Even there were some comments from Planning Commission as far as providing shade, things like that. And so when those types of things become constructed, tell me a little bit about the process, what's expected, or should we have the conversations about, if the porta potties, trash receptacles, are there going to be screening requirements? Probably something we could discuss and talk about. But I just want to talk about, what requirements would be for those types of things, and just talk about the screening and any other further construction on it.
Well, the fencing that's proposed for this facility is relatively low in height, okay? And the site sits on a hill. So you saw the photographs of the site from down on Main Street looking up at the site. So the site's exposed. I mean, there's no amount of fencing that we're going to be able to put on there to screen much of anything out there. And the trail components are raised. So those are going to be sticking up above the fencing that's out there as well. So understand when we're talking about the site and the fencing is not going to obscure pretty much anything. It's going to be visible. It's on a hill or a slope. Anything that you put out there is going to be visible. If you put restrooms out there, you're going to be able to see them. If you are the trash facilities that we're requiring, you're going to be able to see them. The parking facility, you're going to be able to see where you're parking. You're going to be able to see the bike racks. All of those things are going to be visible from Main Street because the site is elevated. It's kind of it's kind of out there in front of you when you're looking up at it. So.
Sure, I realize the visibility, and I agree with the fencing, how exposed it is. I guess no different than anything else, as far as in the commercial district, you have screening for trash receptacles. So, that would be a little bit more than the plastic fence that was, those are the questions, more specific about something like that, even as far as screening for, a porta potty. So actually, if it was set up on the hill, you'd see a screen. You wouldn't necessarily see the porta potty and the.
Were the councils to go down the road of adding conditions requiring the porta potties out there, and you wanted screening, then you can condition that as well.
Okay.
All of that, like you just said, is going to be visible from the road.
Sure. Exactly. Yeah. Got it. And then,
Mayor, if I could, just so from my perspective, as this perhaps goes forward, I think everybody has indicated this is a great thing for the city, and we all want to find a way to do this in the best way possible. That's the council's direction the last two times we've talked about this. So this is the kind of project where the primary responsibility for construction and all of that is on the applicant. But are there ways, and might there be items where the city would want to help for low cost, very low cost, to help screen something sometime in the future? Absolutely. So this will be a win-win for the city to have CCMB, the applicant, put this bear the significant expense to install what's really a pretty neat thing. And so once it's in, and if there's consideration of adding porta potties or some of those things, then the city would look forward to working with the applicant to figure out a way to do that in a way that most enhances the site both practically and visually.
A couple other questions here. As far as the construction, there's comment about construction time or when it's reviewed. So we could condition this 6 months from the time it's actually open versus the time of this meeting. And the other, whether or not we have 6 months for review back to the Planning Commission. Does our Park and Rec annually review our park facilities? Is that when we go through and annually review our Park and Rec facilities? Would this be something of that we would want to include in that and just have and just look at what these facilities are? Any response to that? Do we have annual review of our Rec and Park facilities with our Park and Rec Advisory Board?
I'm not sure if the review is annual. I'm not sure what the frequency is, but we would certainly, especially in the early years of this project, review it regularly to make sure that it's providing the service we want it to provide and operating as sort of as advertised.
Yeah, I just don't want to take things for granted. I just want ask the appropriate questions. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Any other questions from council? Seeing none, I'll open up for public comment. Bonnie, I don't know if you want to speak to this now or just want to hold off to answer any questions specifically, but okay, thanks. Anybody who'd like to speak to this item may do so now. Please come forward.
Hello, Melinda Rice. I live in the Harbor Tract, been there about 15 years, and I came in here with very little information. I've gleaned a lot of information, and I'm even more opposed after hearing the comments. First of all, I can't believe that the city would want to take on such a liability, and that whoever the applicant is, I'm not sure which of the persons here, but I don't know who that is. Are they from the area? I'm certainly not opposed to children having safe places to play. I have a bike. I like to ride my bike. But I think that you have selected probably one of the most dangerous spots in Morro Bay. I don't know where else it could go, perhaps by the school, one of the schools. But I live in the Harbor Tract. The traffic, trying to exit that area at certain times of the day is a nightmare. And sometimes I just close my eyes and dart out because I've been sitting there 5 or 6 minutes and the cars do not go 25 miles an hour. They go 40. To add children and young adults on BMX or whatever kind of bikes, I've gone all around town out of Spencer's, downtown, you come up to an intersection, you're looking both ways, boom, a kid comes flying in front of you. They do not stop, they do not get off, they do not walk across intersections. I did see a young girl today over on across from Lemos and Quintana and Maine, right up there. She actually got off her bike and walked it across that driveway. And I wanted to get out and give her a high five because, you know, I'm not opposed to bikers. Please know I saw you ride your bike in. I'm not opposed to bikers. And I know that cars and bikes don't get along. Why would you want to draw children or young bikers to our area that we have a difficult time getting in and out of? And I'm scared to death somebody's going to get hit. The next thing I'm concerned about is the costs, again, the liability to the city. I'm not going to go into some of the other stuff because you guys answered a lot of that. Possible eyesore. If the project doesn't turn out to work out, is it just going to sit there? Kids coming and going all night long, graffiti, police monitoring, who's going to pay the expenses of the lighting or to have, you know, I think the newspaper said something about worldwide events, for crying out loud, where it's a little tiny spot. Okay, I'll shut up. I got one more
I'm going to have to
little
ask you
input.
to conclude quickly, please.
The road, if you do it, have people enter from Maine on Radcliffe and put a little dirt road going out. And that will alleviate the exiting problem that we do have from Radcliffe. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak to this item?
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Pam Sines. I live in the Harbor Track subdivision. I want to make it clear that I'm not opposed to the bike park. However, I am opposed to having it at this location between Main Street and Little Morrow Creek Road. In Morro Bay's general plan, findings conclude that, quote, all traffic between the north portion of the city and the central south portion must pass through the Highway 1 Main Street interchange. This results in excessive traffic loading on the city street at that point, and in the event of a disaster blocking the interchange, accessibility of major areas of the city could also be hampered. Traffic volumes have increased significantly on Main Street in recent years. Also, Radcliffe Street intersection with Main provides less than desirable visibility of traffic coming northbound on Main due to the curve and freeway bridge abutments, end quote. The city's known since at least 2007 that this stretch of roadway is dangerous, and the identified solution was to realign Radcliffe further north, and the timeline to do that was over 2.5 years ago. The only place to realign Radcliffe further north is the island of city land where the bike park is proposed. There are over 230 dwellings in the Harbor Track, plus ranches on Little Morrow Creek Road that have large truck traffic, and they all enter and exit Main at Radcliffe. The average daily traffic count on Main north of Route 1, which is Radcliffe, was 16,600 cars per day in 2007, according to the Municipal Services Review Report. The speed limit in that area is 35 miles an hour. There is no sidewalk on either side of the street. There is documented impaired visibility, and it's a 2-lane road with narrow bike paths and 2 freeway interchanges. This is no place to put increased traffic or young children on bikes in the street. In the 2001 Morro Bay Bicycle Pedestrian Master Plan, there's a chart of bicycles and pedestrian collisions. There are 19 collisions on the chart that are bicycle related. 9 of those were on Main Street, and it was by far the most reported street for accidents. 6 of those 9 on Main Street were identified as the fault of the bicyclists. Please put the bike park away from the busiest street in town, which is the only north-south connector roadway that already has the most bike accidents in the city. Let them build the kids a bike park. but please require they put it in a safer place. The city's had notice since 2007 that this roadway at this location is a problem, and the bike park will make it worse. Help them find a location on the west side of Highway 1 where it's appropriate and where there's an expanding recreational bike path system in place. But don't hurry up and put it in a location where kids are going to get hurt.
I'm going to have to ask you to conclude, please.
Your vote tonight is not simply a vote for a bike park. Your sworn duty is for the safety and well-being of Morro Bay citizens. You cannot simply ignore the documented traffic dangers of this location.
I'm going to ask you to conclude,
I urge you to deny
please.
the bike park for this location only.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment?
Robert Davis, I live in Morro Bay. The Morro Bay Citizens Bike Committee wholeheartedly supports this bike park, as well as the San Luis Obispo Bike Club. They have financially supported it, and the SLO County Bike Coalition supports the bike park. We all believe that this is going to be an outstanding asset for Morro Bay, and it will be one more thing that differentiates Morro Bay from other cities in San Luis Obispo County and shows that we have attractions that other cities do not. Thank you.
Thank you, Red. Anybody else for public comment?
Name is Bob Keller, Morro Bay. This has been a hot subject for a long time, and I've been kind of in the middle of this because I want a bike park for the kids, keeps them active, gets the energy out, and I think it would be a good thing, but we do need to keep it safe. I believe safety is the big issue. This could be a win-win for both parties. First of all, we get a nice bike park, make it nice for everybody for Morro Bay. And also, we at the Harbor Track could get safety controls, which we've been trying to get for years. They've been putting us off, but this would be our trump card to get the bike park in. We need good signage. We need to get that traffic slowed down from Highway 41 to Morro Bay. They're going down there 50 miles an hour sometimes. I see it. So I recommend that we get good signage, maybe some good, decent crosswalks, maybe by Lemus, where they have the entrance to the freeway and to the PG&E outlet, where they have the bike path and the walk path. Maybe you would do a crosswalk right there. It would slow traffic down. That'd be a good way to stop it without putting stop signs. But crosswalks, signage, and get the traffic slowed down as best you can, the best way legally we can do it with the state and Caltrans. Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment?
Rick Sauerwein, neighbor of Morro Bay. I would just like a point of clarification about something that Ms. Jason had mentioned in her staff report. And did I understand correctly that the fencing that we're talking about is orange construction fencing?
Orange snow fencing, yes.
I would question whether anybody would support orange construction fencing, for goodness sakes. Not only is it an eyesore, it's going to be a terrible problem to maintain.
Anybody else for public comment? Seeing one more.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Charlene Ungar. I'm also a resident of the Harbor Track, and I agree we should have a bike park, but disagree with the location. My concern is safety for children. I'm concerned as a driver in and out of the Harbor Track that I might someday hit a child for not seeing them. We have the busiest fire department in all of San Luis Obispo County. Their route is right up Main Street to get to the north end or to get on the freeway. I see the fire trucks go there all the time. I am concerned about, although they're professional drivers, they are still having to wait for children to clear that area if they're going through there. Any delay in service to residents can be life-threatening. I'm concerned about this proposal of the crosswalk getting off the freeway onto Main. That is a yield. I think something needs to be done because a lot of people blow through that yield and are going to miss children as well, seeing them. So my main concern is safety, and I hope that you are not so myopic that you don't see it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment?
James Costanzo, Mayor, City Council. I just want to voice my concern too. I'm not opposed to the bike, but the infrastructure that we have at that intersection of Radcliffe, the visibility and the speed. I know we put a sign up there, and if anybody's watched that, it's not 25, it's more. So I'm not opposed to that. It's just that we don't have the infrastructure at that on that roadway to support that. Thank you.
Sorry, just writing a little bit. Thanks. Anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to council for discussion. And oftentimes it does, as the public comment comes on, we get into discussion, but it also prompts a few more questions. So we might have to get into some more questions for clarification on this prior to going into discussion. So maybe that'd be a great way to lead us off, and maybe start with some questions based on some public comment. And starting with safety right off the bat, as we've heard this, and obviously some of the conversation and question I had for Ms. Jacinth on how long has this process been going through, and we have been going through this process for a while, and just wanted to get some response in regards to the safety concerns at Ratliff. I think we had the discussions on the intersection there in of itself. We're adding the bike park there. Just want some input on the intersection and some on the safety concerns, and I'm looking towards Rob for some more dialogue on that and to respond to some of our concerns for the public.
As Rob's considering what to say, I'd like to start off and just sort of review where we've been. So I appreciate the significant amount of public comment about siting a bike park at this location. The council has deliberated this question twice of whether the bike park should be here or not. The council voted 5-0 to put the bike park at this location earlier this year. That certainly doesn't mean that you cannot reconsider or think through these questions some more. But the primary purpose of this discussion is the conditional use permit. So from one perspective, the more appropriate questions are fencing and trash cans and operating hours and those things, not whether or not there should be a bike park at this location. So again, in the discussion at which you approved the bike park in this location, we had a significant discussion about safety and about traffic. In fact, one of the things that we said is after the bike park was approved at this location, but before the conditional use permit was approved, the city would begin to take actions to address the safety concerns. And in fact, the Public Works Department installed the 2 radar feedback devices precisely in order to improve the safety at this location. Can we and should we do more? Absolutely. We want to do that. And we will consider look for appropriate ways to do that. But so you certainly have the privilege and perhaps the responsibility to think through these safety issues again. But we're focused primarily on the conditional use of a bike park at that site, not the question of whether or not there should be a bike park there, because you voted very clearly some months ago that there should be one there.
So in response to my question for the public here tonight, just to address the safety concerns, Dave, a couple of them, they're addressed. And I think it's appropriate to make sure that we have responded regardless of the previous votes on this. So just wanted to get that out on the table. Thanks for that. And any other questions from council? I'll start to Noah, am I right?
Yeah, I would like to follow up a little bit on that, because we did talk quite a bit about safety, and I think we have a responsibility from the city to improve the safety of that entire area with or without the bike park. That is something we've acknowledged. I think previously we have not given as much attention to that area as it deserves. It's very complicated, and even as we start ratcheting down and putting more attention there are limits about what we can do within our budget and then within the Caltrans right-of-way. From what I understand and have learned, it seems like perhaps one of the other lower-hanging pieces of fruit that would be a low-budget item would be a no right-hand turn on Quintana and Main. I don't want to start to veer us off the discussion about the planning conditions, but at what point, Mr. Livick, from your perspective as the engineer, would you start to consider doing that, and how would that transpire, with or without the bike park?
One of the pieces of data that we needed to assess whether no right turn on red at Quintana was needed was good traffic count information. So now we have the radar feedback sign at on Quintana there, and in addition to telling people how fast they're going, it also records data. So we can see when speeding is a problem and help us target, perhaps work with PD for time when it would be appropriate for enforcement action. But we can also count to see what the traffic load is, and if we put a right turn on red, we are going to back up traffic on Quintana. What we want to ensure is we're not backing it up too far, and we've had those things in for about a month, so it's time to download that data and review that and look at that. I believe that a right turn on red would be a feasible alternative. What it'll do is create gaps so that people can get out of there. But if you look at the traffic analysis that we did do at that intersection, the wait time is not it's significant to some, but it's not the worst in the world. We have waits up to a minute in length on some of the worst times based on that traffic analysis that was done. Now, the traffic engineer that looked at it did not look at it during a special event holiday weekend when we get a lot of traffic going up and down Main Street. So there are gaps on Main Street. The issues with Main and Radcliffe intersection are a combination. Sight distance, it's right at the limits for what the minimum sight distance is, seeing underneath that bridge. And if that vegetation grows a little bit, it cuts off some sight distance. So we need to keep up on that vegetation to keep it from hanging over the bridge. The other issue is speeding through there. And we can sign it as much as we want. We're probably not putting speed bumps on an arterial street. We're probably not putting crosswalks, using human speed bumps to slow traffic down. So one of the best approaches is the combination of the three: engineering, education, and enforcement. So it can't be just one of those. It has to be all of those. And it is a
a budgetary issue and whether we can, look at that. But we're using the tools in our toolbox to the best of our ability. We also have partners to work on with that intersection. It's a Caltrans intersection, Caltrans right away there. Talking to their traffic engineer who helped us with San Jacinto, he says he knows exactly how to fix that intersection. Right turn only. There's no conflicts. Tell me it's a dangerous situation and we'll mark it right turn only. Radcliffe on the Main. That doesn't help the neighborhood at all. That is, rather punishing, I think. So it is I wouldn't call it a dangerous situation.
It's not ideal.
It's not ideal.
And just to confirm, and you just said it, we are putting attention on improving that intersection with or without the bike park, and we're going to continue to do
Correct.
that.
We're making improvements there as we have the ability, budget, and time to do so. Some of them are regular maintenance items that are now on our list, trimming the vegetation. Some of them are using city funds for radar feedback signs, but our toolbox is limited in speed control. Speed is based on, as I described earlier, that 85th percentile speed survey, or doing changing the designation for that area. So we're not putting up a 25-mile-an-hour speed sign north of Radcliffe unless the city decides that the business district extends north of there, because it wouldn't be supportable.
Okay. Just a last quick question is regarding the color of the snow fencing. As far as I understand, the Planning Commission talked about that, and it is not your standard traditional construction fluorescent orange or orange.
No.
However, you West Coast people say orange. It's more of a tempered gray or brown, right? So that the way.
That is correct. We community development conditioned the project that it be either green or earth tone color.
Yeah.
Considering the drought, there may not be a lot of surrounding green, so earth toned.
That earth tone
to blend
good.
in.
Okay, thank you.
John? You're on. Any way how you want to do questions?
I want to thank the public for coming out and expressing significant concerns of safety. Recognized the issues for some time, not only there but in a number of areas of town that hopefully the new LCP general plan update will begin to develop and help mitigate. I think that there's an advantage to having this facility here. I know there's an advantage. I do feel that this location, although not ideal, I don't know that there's any ideal location in town that would mitigate all the safety concerns that one could have for children and or the neighboring neighborhood with regard to either traffic flow and or people flow. I would be in favor of the project if we mitigated the following issues that were mentioned by the Planning Commission. One, I do believe there needs to be a bathroom facility there. I'm satisfied if it's portable. Two, I do believe children, young people, older young people need to be hydrated, and I think there needs to be water available at the facility. I'm not concerned about dust control. I'm not concerned about after dark lighting. I'm not concerned about shade structures to protect kids from the sun. And I'm most concerned about mitigating as much as possible the safety issues that with regard to the crosswalk for southbound Main Street cyclists traveling to the bike park. Whatever you can do with the 3 E's that you talked about, I would greatly be in favor of and would ask that you do that if we approve this. And lastly, I do think that we need to think about the aesthetics. And I know we're not building an orange fence, but I know that the sighting allows for visibility. And if we could mitigate the direct visualization of things that wouldn't be pleasant to the eye as much as possible, and keep it as natural as possible, then again, I would be in favor of the project.
Thanks, John. Matt?
It's working now. Well, I understand the concerns of the folks up there in the Harbor Track. I lived on Clarabelle as a kid, and so I understand that. However, given the itinerant aspect of the project, staff and the applicants have said, hey, we're going to build this thing and we're going to look at every 6 months. So I'm satisfied with looking at that and understanding full well the traffic situation there. Also, in terms of the aesthetics, I think this thing looks incredible. Looking at the maps, the diagrams, I think this is going to go very well, and I know the kids are really looking forward to it.
Thanks, Matt. Christine?
Hi. I just want to appreciate all the effort that went into all sides of this, and especially the proposals brought forward over the last 2 years. There's been a lot of work put in by various community members, and also I do appreciate Ms. Sines' information and the things that she presented to us when, you know, she's in some ways, not entirely. I appreciate that actually none of the folks who spoke from that neighborhood are against a bike park, and they're not against children, and I know that. I'm sure we all know that. And I understand that, you know, you're not against the facility. It's just it's not for you. It's not even, you know, close to an ideal location. And I think we all are really clear about that. But I appreciate you coming out and consistently letting us know how you feel. And I think that the one on Appendix G1 that was mentioned, I do want to point out because it is important that we're pretty clear about bicycle safety and accidents. And when I did see Appendix G, it's in our packet that we received, Council, and for those of you watching, it talked about, and it was referenced in public comment tonight, that there were a number of accidents on Main Street. And this would be surveyed from 2006 to 2011. It's in our 2011 Morro Bay Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. And, you know, I can't find where on Main Street. It doesn't say. So, you know, I looked at the document, and it isn't listed where on Main. So, you know, unfortunately, we don't know where on Main, and Main is a pretty long street. So just want to kind of clarify that I did read that, and I do understand how that sounds, but we can't pinpoint where on Main Street exactly. Not that there couldn't have been, obviously, accidents happening on that section of Main. But unless somebody else from staff would be able to clarify that, it's just not clear in our plan where that was. But I think it's important to note that. In general, tonight, we have been discussing this and gone over the safety of it. And actually in January, I specifically remember saying, you know, we're absolutely certain this is our location. And we have surveyed other parts of the city, and we did look into places, and there simply is not another spot. So the reason I feel comfortable supporting it is the ongoing nature of our discussion that we've had, and the fact that it's a short-term use. It's 5 years is all that, you know, we're really giving the park. And if the park doesn't work and it's turning out to be maybe something no one's using, or in other words, has a more detrimental, you know, effect on us than we thought it would, then, you know, it is an earthen construction. So, you know, it's going to be, earth will be moved to create it, and it isn't going to last forever if it has to be taken out. I mean, certainly that's not the hope, but that's the reality. Is it's not going to be like a built structure that then would sit there abandoned. Certainly it is in some ways good that it's so exposed, because people drive by a lot, like our police. So I think we're looking, you will have people watching it. But getting back to the point for tonight to guide the applicant, I did want to clarify that the applicant is working with Central Coast Concerned Mountain Bikers. That was a question one of our public comments had, and they are local, county-wide group of bicycle enthusiasts who do trail maintenance all over the county, and quite a large and fantastic group in terms of volunteer effort. So that's the partner. It is someone very local and someone who works on our trails here. I would like to see us clarify that the bike park would come back to the Planning Commission 6 months after operation, and I could use some staff guidance on where we might put that in. I don't know if it needs to be in the resolution, but I think having it start to let it get up and running before we evaluate it seems to make sense to me. I'm also willing to allow the restroom to, I'm allowing to wait for the restroom clarification on that 6-month review rather than putting it in right now. I think that's, I don't feel comfortable conditioning it until we see how much use the park is getting for that restroom. And then I would agree that, we don't want just a very unsightly porta potty out there, but we would need to find creative solutions, much like we did with the parklet, really, finding something creative to screen it. I think we've had success with that, using materials we have found around the city. So if I could get some help, or we could discuss a little bit about how that would look in terms of making sure we're clear on when we want it to come back to planning for evaluation. And then I would also, the restroom and sorry, I lost on my notes. So the restroom, I'm willing to let that go until the review of Planning Commission. I also am willing to wait until 6 months after operation of the park to then review the safety concerns about bike circulation. So I don't feel comfortable right now at this point, without even seeing the park, adding additional conditions, because I think it's a little bit putting the cart before the horse. We may find that the use of that is different. As far as some other examples, we could look around the community, and many of us go to public places all the time that don't have restrooms, and some that do. So I think that maybe in this interim time, perhaps we can kind of sort out how many people it seems to be need a public restroom and how much use of it, would require it. I mean, I'm a proponent of having it, but I also don't necessarily think we need to add that at this point to the applicant. I think we can always come back and add it to the applicant later. So it might be a good time to do some research on that if I were the applicant, find out what it would cost and what they look like and where you get them and who maintains them. That would be something I would look to at the 6-month review. And many times too, water is kind of brought by the people who are participating. And I just like to tease Mr. Heading that it's usually Gatorade or some other scary thing like Red Bull that I think those kids drink. So that water, I'm not sure that would find appealing, just teasing. So without belaboring it too much, I think those were my concerns coming into tonight, specifically dealing with what we were asked to consider this evening. It's been a long process for everyone. And I would also these things aren't really conditioned, and they're not really necessarily asked for, but I obviously, if we're going to continue to work on the bike circulation, I would like us to continue to work on the vehicle circulation in and around Radcliffe as well, which I think this project, it has a positive benefit because now we really are having to refocus on that area that, the city kept putting on, wasn't really focusing on as intensely as perhaps 200 plus residents, 200 resident homes really kind of deserve the attention. So this has directed our attention back on that area, and it may be kind of cold comfort to folks tonight, but at least we are talking about those things, and they're a little more prioritized than they have been. And then lastly, I think that as we look to developing anything in the future, you kind of wonder what the development conditions were on putting in that neighborhood. I thought about that too. If you were to redesign a neighborhood like that with that many homes today, you might have a very different and a more flexible and functional in and out. So, we're a little bit tied with the way it was initially developed, that entire tract. So it's just worth mentioning that we can't only deal with so much about it because it does exist the way it does, and the in and out is how it is. Okay, so thanks very much.
Thanks, Christine, for your comments. It allows many of us not to have to speak to some of the points that you make for everybody. Rightfully so. You do it so well. So it's like, oh, okay, great. That covers so much. So thanks for that. And not to, all teasing aside, sincerely, but just to point out some of the conditions, and we've talked about the safety issues that have been brought up. We've talked about how we, as a council, have supported this previously before getting here tonight. As far as the site location goes, Planning Commission doing their review and good work as far as outline some recommendations for council to review as well. And so we might have to do a little bit of dialogue on some of those because we have some input. I had some thoughts on the bathrooms as well, and I think it probably, given we have a 6-month time frame, I think it would be prudent to just say 6 months after opening instead of. I think we could probably agree on that as far as how we lay out that 6-month review process, and hopefully we can conclude with an agreement on that. And then, as Christine was suggesting, the safety and bathroom might be a good time, and I would agree. I think those are concerns. The bathroom and even the trash was one of the receptacles was one. There was one here for shade structure. I know all those things were, recommendations for, council to consider. And Bonnie, some of the conversations we had prior, to the meeting, thanks. Some of those discussions were had. And I think Councilmember Heading talked about aesthetics, and I would agree. I think we covered orange fencing versus, more of something more natural, and I think that was picked up early on. It certainly was picked up with me as well. I was kind of looking at that. I am hopeful that, we can find some of the right materials or more sturdy materials, staking materials, other than the wood stakes, and would be glad to help you with that as far as some of the hopeful contacts in making that, just because the fencing, you do want it to be sturdy, you want it to be lasting, and so those are my comments there. Aesthetics, though, I feel as though if in 6 months we want to revisit a trash receptacle, bathrooms, and or screening, that the aesthetics would be something we consider tonight, and I would encourage us that screening some sort of wood constructive, I would say natural wood constructed screening be provided to screen the bathroom structure, porta potty, and a trash receptacle. From the street, it's not necessarily, oh, hey, there's a bathroom up there, I'm going to drive up there and go to the porta potty, which creates another problem in of itself. So from an aesthetic standpoint, I would want to make sure that if we revisit that we address it now, and that we consider the aesthetic part of that. Are some of my points. The water, I think I appreciate the water part. As a bicyclist, I try to bring as much water as I can, and I think it's fairly natural for most of the riders to do that. And that's kind of the other thing about riders. Though, if I didn't bring enough, there's probably maybe somebody else that'll give you some water and help you out. No different than with tools and working on bikes and stuff as well. So I feel comfortable with the water, but I do feel as though 6 months we need to revisit, the safety part of it, the bathroom part of it, and I would want to have, conditions that aesthetically that we have some element of screening of those features from the road, if that comes back to us where we need to supply both the bathroom and the trash receptacle. All the other conditions here, I think, from what we discussed tonight, I feel have been addressed. And I know I'm getting an indication over here, Noah, you have some more comments?
Yeah, I do. I just want to say that I do agree that we need to move forward with this. And this really originated from a local grassroots effort that then partnered with the more countywide Central Coast Concerned Mountain Bikers as an umbrella to support what they're trying to do, which I think is important, because the question is, why now with a bike park when maybe 5 years from now we'll have a much better location, very likely as we reevaluate the uses on a Atascadero Road or other opportunities as they open up. But I think one of the things that drove me to support this now is it's a grassroots effort is something that comes and it's dynamic. And if we were to say, you know what, thanks very much, but we'd like you to wait 5 years until we have a better and perfect location, my concern would be that this would fade, and during those 5 years we wouldn't be developing a safe and controlled place for kids to ride. Because right now you look around town and kids are basically utilizing the town as a bike park to a certain degree. And in some ways we've helped them have a more safe place to ride. 5 years ago we didn't have bike lanes on North Main Street, and now we do, and that's helped. And we're continually trying to improve the bike network and the understanding of that. I would like to just suggest perhaps, and I think we can do this loosely and allow the applicant to work on this more, but the condition number 11 to me is really an interesting one, and that's the operational plan. And we really leave it in their court to come back with the rules and how they plan to operate, and they're going to submit that plan to us if we approve this tonight. And I think and I know they're planning on doing some work to try to help establish a culture of safety and personal responsibility within the community that's riding. And I think that opens up a whole lot of other opportunities that I know our Citizens Bike Committee is already working on to increase the awareness and habits of bicycle riders around the community. So I would like to see within that condition some component where the bike park operators are working with our Citizens Bike Committee and the countywide bicycle coalition to help establish and further establish the code of conduct and safe riding practices. And I think there may be some simple language that we could include there. It's kind of inherent in what's already written, but do you have any suggestions with that, Ms. Jathan?
Actually, that was a condition that our city attorney recommended adding, so I would have him speak to condition 11 modifications.
Okay.
Planning condition number 11.
That was the question that I asked. The signage.
No, it's more than the signage. It's about establishing a culture through actual engagement with riders, which is already happening in a lot of ways. I don't want to get too deep into that. I'd like to find a way to help us enhance that or show that we really do support that and we expect that that'll be a component of the bike park operations.
What does it mean?
I would, Joe,
I think,
do you want to?
if I may,
Yeah.
I think condition 11 establishes the need for that operational plan, and that operational plan would include what you just described.
So you could say, including a code of conduct and safe riding practices.
That's what this includes already, because those organizations that are identified as the operational plan is supposed to comply with, that's what they do.
Best practices and so forth. So it's inherent in there already?
Yes.
Okay, great. I think that's important. So with that, I have some notes here. I wouldn't mind making a motion if you're ready for that.
Yeah, and I just maybe we can have. Go ahead, Joe.
I was going to suggest offering a condition number 12 to, I think, meet what I heard you say. In addition, we'll need to change condition number 5 to take the 6 months there and have it be 6 months after operation, not 6 months after permit.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me read to you my shot at a condition that I think get what you wanted to
Okay.
do. So as a condition number 12 on page 6 of the resolution, we would add, the project will be reviewed by the Planning Commission within 6 months after the park is open for public use, and that review could result in additional conditions regarding restrooms and trash receptacles, including screening, and other safety-related matters.
That's exactly what I was going
Water.
to suggest.
Water.
And
Yeah, I'm not going to let that. That's
and
Which
water.
water.
And Kleenex. We need Kleenex down there as well.
Yes, for you.
You know, and I think after 6 months, if we've established water as a necessity, I think that's an easy one to address after 6 months.
I think that could fall into the safety-related
Yep.
matters.
Yeah, yeah. Does that address the issue?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with that addition.
Yeah. So based on some of the discussions, we've got that recommendation to be condition to be added.
You may want to add ask the applicant whether they're okay with that condition.
Okay. And before we do that, did you have any other? And so we're covered with everything. All right. Would the applicant like to come up and respond to the additional conditions?
Bonnie Johnson, Morway Bike Park Group. I am very comfortable with those conditions, coming back in 6 months after operation to review. You wrote it, sorry. I'm comfortable coming back in 6 months after operation to review any additional requirements.
Okay.
It's perfectly fine.
Great, Bonnie. Thanks for your work. All right. And with that, I think we're clarified on conditions, and I would take a motion. Since there's none,
Okay.
I'll
go
make,
ahead, Jamie.
I'll make the motion that we approve CPO 442 and UPO 381 as stated, with the additional condition number 12 as stated by City Attorney.
And adopting resolution number 2015.
And adopting resolution 2015.
And amending condition 5, so we're not back in 4 months.
And amending condition 5.
5, right? It's 5.
Yes, it was 5.
It was 5. Yeah.
And amending 5 was the 6-month part.
You got it.
Okay. So we have a second motion by Jamie, second by Noah. Are we clear on the motion? Do you want to read that back? Or are we good? We're all good on the motion? Okay, good. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Thanks very much. Thank you. All right, so moving on. We're moving on to item C1 under unfinished business. Thanks for your patience and work and everybody coming out. I know we had put a little bit extra work in this, but all worthwhile. Thank you. Thank you, Cindy. Thanks for all your work. Thank you. We have a little bit of folks leaving right now. We're going to let that settle down, and then we're going to bring it back. Okay, folks, we're back and moving on to unfinished business. We have item C1, which is introduction of first reading of ordinance number 592 of the City Council of the City of Morro Bay, amending subsection 14.08.090 of the Morro Bay Municipal Code relating to sale and use of fireworks. Chief Christie.
Good evening, everybody, and let me just clarify what's going on with my eye here. I did fall on Main Street. It wasn't on a bike. It was on 2 feet with a dog, and I'm healing quickly. So we'll get through this really fast. I put together another PowerPoint presentation, and I put some pictures. I failed to do that last time. The difference between safe and sane, that's what they look like. You buy them in the box, and they don't go in the air real high. And then commercial grade, those are the type that do go in the air, and you need a permit by the guy sitting to my right to do that here in Morro Bay. So that's what those look like. And so the reason that I brought this to you is a lot of you asked, plus I wanted to kind of reiterate the public safety concerns. We're in a drought. There's fire danger. The chief from the fire department wanted me to throw that in there. It's hazardous to public safety. There's been numerous complaints in Morro Bay. And, of course, you all are committed to protecting public health, safety, and the welfare of our community. I thank you for that. I also thank you for giving me the opportunity to bring this to you. The recommendations that you review both versions. Within my staff report, I recommend version B. After some reflection about what we discussed last time, I think version A would be my recommendation. And as we go on, you'll see why. And we can always come back next year if we need to and take a look at version B. Both versions talk about increasing the fine structure and also adding a provision where the police officers can give a cite on the first offense. The second version restricts it a little bit more to specified dates. The increased fine structure for both versions are $1,000 for the offense. And again, the police officers have that right to do an administrative citation. So there's basically how version A would read within our Muni Code. That's in your packet. Version B, again, like I discussed, has a restrictive policy as to when you could use safe and sane fireworks. There's more language if you want to read on and on and on about it. That's how the code would read. And included with this ordinance will also be proactive with social media, and our mobile app, and we have the signs on the beaches, and of course proactive patrolling. So again, I wanted to say that version A, I think, really captures what we discussed in our last meeting, and I'll leave it to you to have that discussion. If you have any questions, I'm here, and so is the fire chief.
Great, thanks for that report. Are there
welcome.
any questions for staff to my left? Matt, Christine, John? Noah? None? No?
Just,
no, go. That's okay.
Just one question. Could you define each offense? Is it like if in 24-hour period, if somebody got caught once and then took a nap and then came back and
Yes,
went out
that,
again,
that would be an
two?
offense. That would be 2 offenses.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
No? Christine?
Just on version B, I was wondering about, we're talking about safe and sane, restricting those to certain dates on your version B. So I was wondering about enforcement of that, and that if we have significant complaints about fireworks outside of the 4th of July. On safe and
That's
sane.
our recommendation that you go with version A.
I know.
Oh.
But I'm asking a question about I understand that the chief decided to say version A, but I had a question on version B, just to clarify. Is that okay? Thank you. That's okay. I don't know. It's not a ridiculous. I mean, it's perhaps a pointless question, but I'm just going to ask it anyway. But the version B, because that was my question, is, how do you enforce a date restriction on safe and sane? Because I think that's what we're talking about. Just could you clarify that for me, that was the difference in the two?
Yeah, yes, and what version B is a lot about what the fire code says already about selling. It mirrors that. And so in my experience in Morro Bay in 3 seasons, we get a couple complaints around New Year's Eve. And then we get our majority of complaints around the 4th of July. So version B, we talked about it a little bit last time, and it mirrors, again, what is already in the fire code about selling fireworks.
Okay, great. Thanks for the clarification. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the questions. We'll open it for public comment. For anybody would like to speak to this item, public comment is open. Seeing none, we'll close public comment, bring it back to council for discussion. And I'll look to my left. Matt, do you want to start us off in discussion? Christine?
No, I'm ready to vote, and I would support version A.
Okay. John?
As would I.
Noah?
Well, I was leaning towards B for a number of reasons, but I'm willing to go with A, knowing that we can come back and talk about this again in a future year.
Okay. I just want to thank Chief Christie and Chief Knuckles, I'm sure, for working on this and bringing this back to us, and Noah for agendizing this. And, we have had some discussion as far as over 4th of July. It might seem minor, but, it was good work to bring this forward, and I would be in support of version A myself and look forward to a motion.
So, whomever, shall I? Thank you. All right, so I would move that we introduce, move staff recommendation of version A, and that we introduce and the first reading of ordinance 592 of the City Council of the City of Morro Bay, California, amending subsection 14.08.090. Zero? Is that an additional zero there? An O of the Morro Bay Municipal Code relating to sale and use of fireworks.
Second.
We have a motion by Christine, a second by John. Great motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Thanks very much. All right. Thank you. Moving on to item C2. Item C2 is introduction and first reading of ordinance number 593 of the City Council of the City of Morro Bay, adding Chapter 9.34 to the Morro Bay Municipal Code, banning the possession of certain intoxicating compounds known as synthetic drugs. Chief Christie.
Good evening again.
Thank you.
This one will go a little quicker. There's only one version. Can't go without my pictures, though. I just wanted to reiterate the pictures. Bath salts and spices. They come in lots of packages. They look like this. And thank you to one of the council members who pointed out an article that was recently published in the New York Times. And it basically talks about how ER visits are growing, and it's growing with young people, teenage kids, and it's become an epidemic in our country. And so that's why this is so important, and I want to thank council for bringing that forward as an issue that we're going to work here in Morro Bay. Also, in the county currently, the only 2 cities that have a ordinance banning the prohibition are Atascadero and Paso Robles, so we would be third. I think Councilmember Heading asked how we would test these substances. We currently do have test kits back at the PD for bath salts, and we'll get the others for spice as well. And the recommendation is tonight that we take public testimony, move to waive the reading of the ordinance, and introduce the first reading. Fiscal impact, of course, there's no alternatives because we need this here in Morro Bay, and I talked about that at great length on March 10th. And the fiscal impact is really in what it would take us to do the investigation of these violations. So, again, we prepared an ordinance. You've had an opportunity to review it. And again, I think it supports your commitment to protecting public health, safety, and welfare in our community, and I thank you for that. And Chapter 9.34 basically prohibits the use and possession and sales of synthetic drugs in our community. Officers will seize any evidence of that crime, and failure to comply is a misdemeanor, which we will forward to the city attorney for prosecution. And at this time, we can do the first reading. Thank you very much. By title only. Would you like me to go ahead and do that? All right. An ordinance of the Council and the City of Morro Bay, California, adding Chapter 9.34 to the Morro Bay Municipal Code relating to prohibition of possession of certain intoxicating chemical compounds known as synthetic drugs. Thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thank you, Chief Christie. At this time, any questions from council? Nope, seeing none. We'll open up for public comment. Anybody like to speak to this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to council for discussion and motion. Any discussion from council? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to approve as read by first reading by Chief Christie.
I would make the motion to approve as read by Chief Christie.
And we have a motion and a second.
Second.
Second by Noah. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. Great. Thank you very much for that. And moving on to item C3. Item C3 is discussion and direction regarding agenda for April 30th, 2015 joint meeting with Cayuga Sanitary District. And that would be Mr. Buckingham.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. So the purpose of this presentation is simply to do a brief review of the current status of the wastewater treatment plant water reclamation facility project and just get Council reaffirmation of our longstanding direction for the project. So our staff recommendation is that you, the Council, reaffirm our City of Morro Bay intention to work cooperatively with the Cayuga Sanitary District to construct a regional WWTP/WRF with the capacity to serve both Morro Bay and the Cayuga Sanitary District at the previously agreed on preferred Rancho Colina site in 5 years and guided by our previously established project goals. Agenda, I'll present the staff report. We'll field your questions, public comment, council discussion, and then we have a motion for your consideration reaffirming your intent for the water reclamation facility. So a quick bit of background. The existing Morro Bay wastewater treatment plant is 62 years old and it sits in a floodplain on the beach. It dumps 850 gallons of treated water a day into the ocean, and it must be replaced. 850,000 gallons. Thank you. 850,000 gallons of treated water into the ocean each day must be replaced, and that's about 85% of our use, of our clean water use, roughly. In January 2013, the California Coastal Commission denied a permit to build a new wastewater treatment plant at the existing site. So that option was taken away from us in January of 2013. Also in February of 2015, the Water Board issued us another letter stating that the permit for the existing wastewater treatment plant will expire in 2021. Since that time, really since January 13, Morro Bay has been working toward construction of a new regional water reclamation facility. Over the past 2 years, the City of Morro Bay has established comprehensive goals for the new facility, committed to completing a new facility in 5 years from the time of, 5 years from the date of expiration of the permit, when it is actually issued. Will be our last permit for the current site. The city has sought and received Coastal Commission and Water Board affirmation for a new regional facility at a location off the beach. The city spent about $400,000 on various critical studies to determine feasibility and site preference, and the city has worked to improve a strained relationship with the Cayucas Sanitary District. Here are your project goals. You're well aware of them. You created them. I wasn't here, so I won't read through them. But Morro Bay is working with the Cayucas Sanitary District to establish joint project goals, which I think we all think is important as we move forward together. You haven't seen this, but here is the simplified normal person's interpretation of the 4-page engineer's timeline for this project. So the black lines at the top, now this is a rough estimation of a very precise engineer plan, so please don't hold me to precisely where those arrows start and end. But generally, we're in a planning phase for about a year and a half, this year and through fall of next year. And then sometime in early 2017, we get into the design build phase for the wastewater treatment plant portion. It will be a much improved wastewater treatment plant portion from what we currently have. But that first design build, which will go through about 2020, 2021, is essentially to build a new wastewater treatment plant at the new site. And then following, we'll build a design build for a water reclamation facility. So in sort of layman's terms, the first thing that we're planning on doing is building a new, exactly what we have, but using 21st century technology. And then after that, or subsequent to that, I should say, we'll attach a big filter on the end of it so that water is even cleaner and can be used for better use than just dumped into the ocean. Also would note that that build WRF line and arrow, that could move up in time. There's nothing that prevents that from moving up in time except really capacity, staff capacity, planning capacity, permitting, and of course money. Okay, so so that's sort of the top line in black. The colored lines there, they do mean something. Red means hasn't happened yet. Amber means sort of ongoing, and green means is happening. So the fatal flaws analysis is ongoing. The City of Morro Bay has started those fatal flaws analysis and is funding those. The facility master plan consultant line there, which you see below that in amber, the RFP, a three-party RFP, joint with the Cayucas Sanitary District, is out on the street. We anticipate responses to that by the 12th of May. And so that's in amber because the RFP is out, but we don't have proposals back yet. There are two critical sort of next steps in this process, and that is to get an RFP for program management out, and then get an RFP for the environmental review consultant out. So those are the two RFPs that need to go out fairly quickly. You'll see we believe that the program management consultant contract will really run through the design build of the wastewater treatment facility, and that will be, in a sense, our staff member to really shepherd this project through. And Rob and I will provide, with Cayucas, with Rick Kuhn, provide essentially executive program management. But there will be a program manager that we should hire in order to provide that, so Rob and Rick can focus on their day jobs, which is run public works for the city, not only build a plant. Okay, so near-term decisions and actions. We need to release the program manager and the environmental review RFPs. We should do that very quickly. We need to select the facility master plan consultant that we anticipate doing after we receive proposals back on the 12th of May, in May and June. And then we need to apply for state revolving funds or other financing, at least the state revolving funds for planning, not necessarily for the design build portion, by summer. Location preference, just as a reminder. So the projected cost for a WRF, that's a wastewater treatment plant plus the water reclamation component at CMC, was projected at about $167 million. The projected cost for a wastewater treatment plant portion only, that's the first phase, at Rancho Colina is projected at $74 million. Putting the filter on the end of it, the second phase, which is the WRF phase at Rancho Colina, was projected at $28 million. So that is $102 million for Rancho Colina versus $167 for CMC. Also, the studies that were commissioned identified the increased cost of operations and maintenance at Rancho Colina to be 40% more expensive. I'm sorry, at CMC to be 40% more expensive than Rancho Colina. And so in December of 2014, both Morro Bay and the Cayuga Sanitary District expressed a site preference for the Rancho Colina site. Discussion. Since December of 2014, the City Council and Cayuga Sanitary District have identified Rancho Colina as the preferred site, have expressed an intention to keep the project moving forward while working through some of the details that are related to operation of the future site, have publicly and jointly, as I just described, released a request for proposal for facility master planning for a new facility, and are working toward an MOU to set common goals, to share costs, and to establish a combined citizens committee related to the new WWTP WRF in order to keep the project moving forward. Next steps following are some key upcoming steps. We need to complete the fatal flaws analysis. We need to release the RFPs for program management and environmental review. We need to receive and evaluate proposals for facility master planning and select a consultant for facility master planning. In the near term, we need to complete a cost sharing and goals agreement with the Cayuga Sanitary District. We need to apply for state revolving funds or other financing. And then in the longer term, we need to agree on the structure of future site governance with our partners from Cayugas. So I would ask you to consider this motion tonight, just to tell your community and your staff that we're doing the right thing and we're moving forward in the direction that you want us to. None of this is new. You all have been working on this for some time. We've been working on it together, but I thought reaffirming this with a motion might be a nice thing to do. So the City of Morro Bay reaffirms our shared intention to work cooperatively with the Cayuga Sanitary District to construct a new wastewater treatment plant water reclamation facility at the preferred Rancho Colina site to reach initial operational capacity for the wastewater treatment plant portion in 5 years, and pledges to continue to work in good faith to keep the project moving forward on the previously presented 5-year schedule. Over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Great report and presentation. And with that, any questions from council? I'll look to my left. Matt, do you want to start us off? Any questions? Christine, any questions? Okay. John, questions? Noah? Seeing none, I'll open it up for public comment. Anybody like to speak to this, please come forward.
Yes, thank you very much, Barry Brandon, Morro Bay. First, I'm very concerned that this lovely presentation was not made available 24 hours before the City Council meeting electronically. However, I had noticed that it was. And this was not available on the website that I could find. And I think that it's so important that it would have been very nice. But the reason I'm here is to talk about relationships. I've been fortunate to be in a relationship for not 64 years, it's only been 55 years. And it's been a very interesting relationship. We started out together, tried to find our way through to get our families grown up. We did a lot of give and take. We had some good times, we had some thin times. But throughout the entire 55 years, the one thing we had that made it work was trust. And I'm afraid that in our hurry to get the water treatment plant built, that we have lost the trust of our partner. And unless we get a marriage counselor and it can solve the trust problem, being an engineer, I'd love to do the things that were outlined by Mr. Buckingham, but that's not something I think we can do without trust of our partners. And I've had conversations with members of our community and members of Cayuca's community, and they all say the same thing. They're disappointed. They say, hey, we're partners. How about talking to us about it? Maybe it's because we're a democracy, we have to do everything in an open meeting, and we can't just sit down in a room and talk about it. But I know if I were responsible for my partnership, my 55-year partnership, and I saw and felt the friction that I feel with our partnership, and I didn't find a marriage counselor that could sit down outside of the feeling of this room and solve the problem, the alimony is going to be very expensive.
Thank you, Barry. Anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and bring it back to council for discussion. Start off to my left. I'm going to keep going this way tonight and look at... All right, I'll lead it off this way. John, you want to start us off with any discussion? Or, I can do that as well.
Was that a refusal by a council person to
No,
obey
I
the
think
mayor's command?
No. It's like, hey, where are we going here?
Thank you for the definition of successful relationship. I raised two girls and told them that the absolute foundation of any relationships that they're going to have in their lives, including those with their parents, themselves, their future partners, their bosses, so to speak, would be based on a foundation of trust. So I absolutely concur. I do recognize that there are limitations that inhibit one's ability to have casual conversations that might provide insight into direction or feelings by something like a city council, other than in a public venue. I too have received feedback from community members from both communities, oddly enough, with regard to the issue you've described. I think that we have, at least in my short tenure, and the tenure that I speak of is December the 9th of 2014. In my short tenure, we have laid out very succinctly a direction that was based upon regionalization that would allow for economies of scale, collaboration, cost sharing, and what I would call, or what I would hope, would be at least the possibility of the re-beginnings of the building of a defined trust relationship. And so I'm talking about since I've been on the council, and given that, we've moved forward, and I concur with the presentation. I think it outlines very well what we have done, where we're headed, and I would reaffirm the need and the desire to have this be a regional, collaborative partnership based upon the foundation of trust that needs to be laid, and that a cost-sharing arrangement would be an important aspect of that. So I would affirm, I think that's what you had in your summary, I would affirm that. And so thank you.
Thanks, John. Noah?
I agree, and I think we have worked really hard over the last year, but also previous to that, to get to a point where we have what I think to be an excellent site for a wastewater treatment plant. And we came to that decision by very strong public and community engagements and review and analysis, spending serious money on a serious decision that needs to be made with that sort of review and analysis. So I'm personally feeling confident that we can get to the point where we have a plant. I think we also need to all realize we don't have a choice about how quickly we need to get there. And the real expense and decision that would be expensive to the community is to not keep moving this project forward, knowing the deadlines that are ahead of us, and the real risk that our community faces with having this plant down in the floodplain in a tsunami zone right on the coast in the aged condition that it's in. Every year that goes by, we run a risk of having a serious environmental issue for our community, which will shut down our economy and our quality of life in a very serious way. So as the host community, I think it's something that we really have to keep our eye on the ball and keep this thing moving forward. And I'm really committed to continue trying to work together. And we've said it many times, the final decision about governance and structure and decisions within the plant operations needs to be equitable. There's no doubt about that. And there are some things that we've already suggested about working together with joint goals and so forth that the city manager reviewed that I'm sure we're going to continue with. So I think your suggested motion is accurate, and I'm willing to continue in that direction.
Great. Any discussion this way?
No, I agree with what's already been said by John and Noah, and I agree with the proposed motion. Ready to go forward with it.
Christine?
Thank you. It's so tempting to make more marriage analysis, like jokes, but I won't. I'll just commend Mrs. Brannon for her 55-year sentence. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean marriage. I think that it's those of us up here and our staff and many community members are focused on this project. And however, there are a lot of people that go about their daily lives and they're not as focused on it. So I think I appreciate this item, taking stock of where we are very simply. I think I'm sure Mr. Buckingham will respond in a way that this can be posted, or perhaps this will be on a JPA agenda. I guess the JPA agenda is already out. But I'm sure we can get it onto the website rather quickly so people can see it, because I think it is one of the simplest ways we have this document to explain where we are. Because it's true, a lot of the other documentation needs to be engineer speak, but in this case, it's fairly clear where we are. And I think it honestly reflects where we've been, and I think everyone can take a look at it. And if it's on the website, then everyone has access, so I appreciate that. So in that way, I think it's great for all of us to take a look and see just the basics of where we are and the hopes of where we're going. And certainly you outline the key themes, which are regional plant, collaboration with our Cayucas Sanitary District partners, and then moving through the specific tasks that need to be done. So I appreciate the opportunity to daylight this for our community and for our partners as well, and look forward to JPA meeting, which I'll just do a promo, is on this Thursday, beginning at 6 at Vets Hall in Cayucas. So I think this is a great document for us to have reviewed prior to going into that meeting as well on Thursday, and hopefully we'll see lots of folks out then to discuss it with us. Thank you.
Okay, great. All good discussion points. Obviously very well laid out, tells the story. I think to be able to tell the story in the number of slides you presented in was pretty remarkable, actually, because there's a lot to the story, and there were a lot of steps and processes along the way. There's so many comments. Noah, you made some great comments on what we have currently with our wastewater treatment plant, where its location is, and the next steps we need to make. I mean, we go through a major maintenance, an MMRP review program report monthly, and that's basically to manage the plant. I think the analogy is we keep the plant operating all the way until we cross the finish line, and it falls apart at that point. only from the sake of we don't want to invest too much in it, but we have to be responsible enough and invest in it to keep it operational. And I think we're doing a pretty responsible job of doing that. And I don't think we are necessarily investing only the minimal amount to keep it because, keep it together at the finish line. But we are doing a good job of managing our current plant. But it's very, very clear that we have committed to moving to our preferred location of Rancho Colina. We have the fatal flaws analysis that's going out there. All those types of analysis come back, and then at that point, depending on how those reports come back, we'll be able to say, okay, we've got a clear runway, a green light, ready to go. And as with the motion, as far as reaffirming our shared intention to work cooperatively with Cayuga Sanitary District to construct a new wastewater treatment plant, a water reclamation facility at the preferred Rancho Colina site to reach initial operational capacity in 5 years, and pledge to continue to work in good faith to keep the project moving forward on the previously presented 5-year schedule would be my motion.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second, and open for discussion.
May I make one clarification? I believe you, on the 5-year schedule, are only talking about the wastewater treatment facility and not the WRF.
As stated in there, yes.
Is that?
Is
that how it reads?
Operational capacity wastewater treatment plant in 5 years.
No, you're not going to do a WRF. I'm sorry. Is that?
Jamie, do you want to just refer to the motion again? I think it's
sure.
It's up there, and then it's also here.
It says, as it's read, to reach the initial operational capacity for the wastewater treatment plant in 5 years.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess one of the front slides had and WRF. My apologies. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries. Thanks very much, Dave. That concludes item